Hello and welcome back to Getting It Done. I don't remember what episode we're on.
I don't know, I haven't been counting.
Yeah, I think we're on like 6 or 7 or something.
I think that's your job.
Yeah, most likely. It's fine, I'll probably not. It'll be in the thumbnail, don't worry about it.
Nice.
But yes, today we're talking about modifying the game. Now this is a topic that of course was suggested to me by one of the boys, and when they said it I was like, holy shit, why didn't I think of that? Because we did play an entire 2-year campaign based primarily off of a custom game concept where we completely reworked the entirety of the world and everything.
Completely different rules.
Yep. So at that point we basically weren't playing D&D anymore, but that's all good, that's fine, that's chill, because at the end of the day, the whole spirit of D&D is custom doing things, and
It's in the rules.
I mean, it literally is in the rules, as you've been saying a few times, of what in the DM's
in
guide,
the
I believe.
DMG, yeah. The DM's workshop, I think it is, section.
Yep.
The rule is literally just do what you want.
Yeah, and so of course, by just doing what you want, that's something I'd suggest, like just doing, of course, obviously, but by kind of doing it willy-nilly, it's an easy, quick way to end up in a position where you maybe haven't got things particularly balanced, and I can't particularly say that I was good about it.
Some might argue that D&D's not balanced.
True. I mean, we were just talking about Sickening Radiance and how OP that can be, theoretically.
Well, it's epic. It's like a 4th level spell, though.
I mean, yeah, 4th level for a wizard is like level 9.
Yeah.
Like,
Big damage.
Yeah, I mean, it's useful, definitely.
So, if you pass the save, you don't take any damage.
Yeah. But theoretically, if I'm not mistaken... Yeah, perfect example of not balanced. I mean, even shadows. We've talked about this over the last couple of podcasts. But there are a few things that aren't balanced, and that's sort of the nature of just custom building things. As a DM, it's sort of your job to adjust it on the fly, but I figured it's a good idea to at least talk about some of the things that come with modifying the games, little bits and pieces to try and keep it relatively balanced. But at the end of the day, our advice and suggestions
are just that.
Yeah, we're not exactly professionals. We've only been playing for 3, 4, maybe 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
So,
well, technically, I doubt I would become a professional, seeing as that means make a dosh.
Well, yes, professional. It's either make and dosh, or I think it's an expert is, I think, after putting in 1,000 hours of work into it, which, granted, one D&D session is like 6 hours, but even if we round it down to, say, 5 hours...
Still a fair bit.
Yeah, that's like 200 sessions, which, assuming you're playing weekly, is 4 years, which, I mean, actually, now that I'm saying that, that kind of sounds doable, but that implies weekly playing at least 5 hours a week, etc. Regardless.
5 hours a week, every week for 4 years.
Yeah. Which, regardless...
That sounds a bit, unrealistic.
I mean, yeah. Keep in mind, like, whilst we have, we've played relatively often, I wouldn't say it's weekly. We did for quite a while play weekly, like 20, 50 weeks in a row, give or take. There is, of course, the week off of like, oh man, it's Christmas, or oh man, I have work to do, or oh man, I have, university work, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And in those circumstances, it's like, okay, well, it's kind of understandable. Regardless, we've gone on a bit of a tangent. Basically, the long and short of it is that the game is something that is built to be modified, and I, after putting a bit of thought into it, have come up with, I think, 3 categories denoting the scope of modifications that you can make. And so naturally, the headings, or the scope headings that I've made, can be sort of interchangeable depending on how in-depth you want to be with them. But to quickly go over it, and we'll go over it in more depth, my heading, and of course, Kris, you're welcome to disagree with me if you wish. But so my first heading is the character modification heading, where you're talking about modifying specific individuals, characters, perhaps races or classes.
Yeah.
Where realistically you can make a change to that and not fundamentally change, well, really anything about the world. It's more of just a gameplay tweaks to try and make sure it's a bit more fun.
Yeah, I can see this being a player reading through the features of their class or race or something.
Yep.
Going to the DM and saying, "Hey, this is shit.
Yeah,
Can we
like
swap it?" Or
Ranger, or like, hey, can maybe instead of just getting beasts for my Beastmaster Ranger, can I maybe get a baby Dragonoid or something, like something flavorful and cool?
or like, "Hey, fucking druids can't wear metal. This rule is bullshit."
Yeah, I know that we've talked about this one for quite a while, where it's sort of like Wood Elves in Skyrim, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so it's small little changes that don't really do much to the world, if anything, really. So you could change them mid-game, and you won't have to go and revise much, right? So of course stuff like that is the addition of spells and feats. So
that's a common one.
Adding Unearthed Arcana, removing Unearthed Arcana, saying, hey, I might let you guys choose from an extra couple of feats that I have custom made. I know
just making up your own spells.
Yeah, it's pretty chill stuff.
Which realistically, I don't see why you can't just, make your own cantrip and flavor it to be a different element or something.
Yeah, like having an ice bolt as a cold equivalent to firebolt.
Or like a little lightning zapper.
Yeah,
It's
or
like
even just like a force bolt, like you take magic
like,
missile but smaller.
It's like firebolt, but
yeah,
lightning.
Like a lot of that stuff you can easily do, and frankly, in my opinion, I do prefer to have more, even if it's just redundant stuff where it's like, oh, my ice bolt is like a firebolt, does the same damage, it's just of the cold type.
It's a different element.
And frankly, that, while as small as that is, it still adds a lot of flavor, especially if you're trying to build something like a cold-based character or
definitely
something fun. But back when playing MC Eternal, we came across Dart, which was a spell that you can get on your wand. This is Minecraft, and Electro Blobs to Wizardry is the mod, but it's essentially like a small, a leaf dart or something.
Yeah, like a little wood dart.
Yeah, and that could be something along those lines. It gave off the same energy or same vibe as just a firebolt sort of thing.
Yeah.
So naturally, that sort of stuff is pretty easy to do. Another example is changing stats about a race. So, for example, we were talking about the Lionel, I believe the name was.
I don't know if that's what it's called, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah, because, Lionel's, as we're going back to where the conversation came from, we were talking, because I'm playing Breath of the Wild at the moment, and while we've been hanging, I've just been playing it. And I came across a Lionel in that, and we were saying, hey, isn't that... Well, Kris was saying, hey, isn't that the... like a lion-based tabaxi in D&D.
It's the lion folk?
Yeah. But
that's 2015, I think. But...
Oh, yeah. But yeah, just saying stuff along the lines of like, hey, wouldn't they get charisma and strength instead of dex and whatever else the tabaxi gets? I don't particularly recall off the top of my head. I'm not too interested in playing tabaxi. But yeah, would it not be a wise idea to get something like that? And that's all just semantic stuff that the DM would say, like, oh, hey, yeah, no, whatever, up to you, sort of thing.
The dndwiki.com page for lion folk is a bit wacky.
Oh, is it? D&D Wiki, isn't that one of the ones that it's very different? Like, you have to keep an eye out for the tag that says that it's Unearthed Arcana or homebrew and stuff.
Think so, but...
Because I remember I've come across it a few times and I've mistaken it. Okay, fair.
So, it's kind of... Immediately I notice the only strength score improvements are +2 to strength. That says age, lion folk consider themselves adult at 33, and on average live to about 300. That's
interesting because generally, if you look at most races, they tend to get +3 overall to stats.
Yeah.
+2 feels a bit weak, especially if you're trying to build a lion. I don't know, lion kind of gives off fighter barbarian style implications to me, at least, just thinking about it.
A paladin?
Yeah, possibly a paladin, a nice proud paladin who, golden shining armor, sort of stuff.
Here it says it has the brave feature, advantage on saving throws against being frightened.
That kind of combos into Paladin, but
Yeah, I guess
Paladins
so.
inherently have heroism.
Well, yeah, they have heroism, but
Or they can take heroism, rather.
yeah, they can take that spell. But if it's not a devotion paladin, like devotion paladins get the aura that makes everyone within 10 feet immune to being frightened.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing devotion, it's pretty good.
Yeah, fair. I mean, so yeah, stuff like that where it's adding or changing races around. Stuff that really doesn't matter. Like, oh man, my +3 overall goes to this place instead of this place. It's not really that big of a deal end game. Oh, Leonin is what it's called. Or Lionin, I guess. So close, Lionel, Lyman. Not bad. Another thing I've got here is changing class abilities, or racial abilities as well. So maybe
So it's
making
con
it
2 strength 1.
Const 2, Strength 1. Yeah, I kind of see that. Maybe if not Const, then Charisma, I
What do
guess.
Dragonborn get?
Dragonborn get +2. Well, it depends which Dragonborn type you're taking. The standard one, I believe, is Strength and Strength and Wisdom.
I
think.
Strength and Charisma.
It might be Strength and Charisma.
I think it's
Strength is one of the ones. There's the Ravnica one, I think, was from.
Imagine referring to Ravnica.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a Matt Mercer one. They're the tailless ones.
What Ravnica?
There's a Ravnica variation of the Dragonborn that doesn't have a tail and doesn't have the elemental resistance of its type, but they have an ability that on taking damage they can.
I don't think Dragonborns have tails.
I'm pretty sure the standard ones do.
I think that's half dragons.
Okay, well, regardless, they also don't have tails.
So half dragons
Actually, I can
have
just check
tails,
it here.
I think, and Dragonborns do not.
Dragonborn. It depends on which one you're looking at. I mean, a lot of them are covered by cloaks.
Pretty sure that canonically Dragonborns don't have tails. I don't know.
Fair. Just like this one does, but that's art, so that's not really. 5. That kind of looks relatively legit.
Looks like a lizard folk.
Yeah, though it's under the heading of Dragonborn, which is odd. 5 ESRD. I don't want your mega bundle, thanks. Yeah, this is the Dragonborn thing. Regardless, it's really up to what you're looking at, but I don't really look for tails regardless, frankly, in my characters, but...
Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah, but in Ravnica, you get Strength and Const, I believe, as your 2 stats, and you get the... What is it? It's some... I don't remember the name of the ability, but when taking damage, you can, once per short rest, use your reaction to make another attack option on them, which can be good, can be bad, depends really what you're building, frankly. Good for barbarians, it feels good for... Probably fighters even more so, because do fighters use their reaction too often? Like, apart from opportunity attacks and stuff, of course.
I'm not too sure. Depends on the fighter, I guess.
True. Yeah, that sort of stuff. Changing abilities around. There was one thing that actually I find quite common is changing it up to determine whether a potion can be drank as an action or a bonus action. That's something I see done quite often, and that's a small mechanical change.
Like, so I think what it says in the rules, if I'm remembering correctly, so drinking like an ale is an object interaction.
Yes.
But for balance reasons, drinking a potion is an action.
Yeah, because it actually heals you.
Yeah. So even though it's still just grabbing something and drinking it, one's essentially almost free action.
Yeah.
And the other one is an action.
Yeah, and depending on how you feel about that, you can really change that if you feel it's necessary. But that's an option of something that you can do as like a little side rule. I know, Kris, you're quite familiar with the cleave rule.
Yep.
So I actually do want to give it a rundown because you can probably explain it better than I can.
Cleave rule. So this isn't word for word, and I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly.
Yep.
But if you deal enough damage to a creature to fully wipe out its health, and you have enough, and you have more damage, like remaining, you can impart that to the creature next to it, assuming that you would have hit that one as well.
Yeah, fair. Kenny says you would have it as a free action out of combat and a regular action if you're in combat. Not sure about all the action types in 5e. Fair, fair. Also, welcome back, Kenny. It's been a little while since we've done the podcast. Apologies for the latency with that. Yeah. So I believe standard stuff going over actions off the top of my head. You got free actions, your object interactions.
Yep.
Which are basically free actions, anyways. Bonus actions, reactions, and regular actions. So an object interaction is like drinking an ale, but for balance, of course, because theoretically,
well, it's not a free action, but it's most people don't use it, so
yeah, it's not
doesn't matter.
Really worth thinking about, yeah.
It's opening a door, pressing a button,
stowing, or bringing out your weapon is the other thing.
Yeah, that's actually where it comes into play that a lot of people overlook.
Yep.
Stowing and drawing a weapon.
Yeah, so for example, if you're playing... Hang on, give me a second to clear my throat.
So, if you have a sword and shield...
Yep.
If you keep both on your back, or, shield on your back, sword on your hip kind of thing...
Yep.
You have one object interaction.
Yeah, so you can't get both of them out.
You can't draw both.
Yeah, which most DMs are just going to say, well, screw it, I don't really care.
They'd be
both of them out.
Like, I guess you can say you carry your shield.
I mean, yeah, depending on how big it is, I suppose. Kenny says, trying to drink a beer mid-combat is a lot more difficult than doing it during leisure. True, yeah. Especially if you're, like, moving around.
It depends on how proficient you are at drinking beer.
I mean, I'll tell you what, you're not inherently wrong there. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, a drunken monk, or it's not Kinsey, the drunken monk. I believe it is literally just called the drunken monk. Yeah. Probably could pretty easily do that, but yeah, fair.
Well, the deal isn't that they are drunk; it's that they look drunk.
Oh, fair. That makes sense then. In that case, maybe I should play it because
drunken kung fu is a
drunk fu.
Drunk fu.
Yeah.
Drunken style is pretty interesting looking.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be like looking like you're giving a lot of opportunities to hit, but calculated like.
They move very fluidly and they're all wobbly looking.
Yeah.
But it's all completely intentional and balanced.
Fair. There are breakaway sheaves one should be able to use that should technically make drawing a sort of free action, but you don't think they normally have them in D&D. Well, yeah, exactly. And so, after all, this whole podcast episode is about modifying the game. So, if that's something you want to include, that is something you can include, for example.
Also, that could be a reason to have unarmed attacks. Like,
True, actually, yeah.
If you have claws, you can choose to draw your shield and attack with
yeah, that's actually a good call as well, yeah. That actually does explain why they would be so willing to give out unarmed attacks, stuff like Tabaxi.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. That's
People
fair.
in demon armor. People in demon armor.
Hmm?
Demon armor is good as long as, there's no wacky shit going on.
And you're not, going and talking to the devil trapped inside your demon armor, which, yes, we know it's a bit wacky, and then selling your soul and all your ancestors to them. Thanks, certain individual of which who has done that we were in a campaign with. Drunken Master type classes, you would just give the ability to drink faster than others as an ability. Since you could technically also use potions to do attacks and such, so being able to drink multiple times around would be great. Yeah, fair. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, it's one of those sort of things where realistically, it's just really up to how you want to rule it as the DM. Because
Stephen would rule Drunken Masters as having no disadvantage on attacks while drunk.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which, I mean, understandable. Actually, is there technically, wouldn't certain types of monks or certain races have immunity to poison?
Correct.
So they could just drink alcohol non-stop and be just not affected by it?
Yep. What are they called? Yuan Ti.
Ah.
They're immune to poison. Snake people.
Interesting. But aren't they, like, vulnerable to something else?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Could have sworn there was some catch with that.
I think they're immune to poison.
I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Give her a Google.
Yeah, probably should. Yuan Ti. But yeah, the other thing I would say is, this is not the right. Wait, is it?
Yeah, that's
5th
the right
edition.
one.
Okay, fair.
Except this is the creature, not the race.
Yeah, looks like it. Forgotten Realms, maybe?
I think that's
the pure blood. That's the same thing.
I think that's the race.
Okay, well, regardless, we can skip over that, and we'll come back to that maybe later.
I'll just look it up in the book I got.
Yeah, fair. Okay, well, while you're doing that, there are several ways you might handle it. You should be able to gain bonuses that offset the penalties, or begin to diminish and negate them. It's crucial for the class theme. For a Drunken Master, yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I would say that sounds pretty fresh anyways. But yeah, it realistically comes down to just, I get why that they did it, and they made it so it's like that. At the same time, doesn't really make a difference. Like, it's, if you want to rule it one way, rule it one way. If you want to rule it the other, rule it the other. Ultimately, that's the whole thing about being the DM, is you can choose what you find to be, worth making viable and worth not. Now, the other interesting thing that I heard a while ago and I was giving some thought to is that the other couple of things, well, the other two bits and pieces I would say for character modifications are the addition of extra skills. So, say, instead of just history, whatever, blah, 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 under intelligence, you maybe make it science, or you give science one of them. And that's, depending on what sort of world you're building. I know, Kris, for example, you're building a world that is very anti-science, like away from that sort of thing, like science does not exist.
I like my stuff fantasy.
Yeah, so you wouldn't do that sort of thing, but if you wanted to go and separate Arcana maybe out from a different magic skill, where it's like, you have Arcana as like the history of magic, but then you also have just magic knowledge as how does magic work, which if you wanted to that you could split them out. I don't see why you would, but if you think of something that would work, you could do that. Science is usually just the go-to for me when it comes to adding extra abilities, because I mean, in the campaign we did, that sort of was fitting. But yeah, you made a new skill that's basically magic tech rather than mechanics. Setting themed skills are great as long as you play in the setting. Yeah, exactly. If you're trying to take a science skill into someone's campaign where they don't have science, it's going to be a bit weird. And then that kind of also goes to something else that I think I heard, I believe it was Matthew Colville, I think, was talking about, in terms of adding an entire new stat. So instead of your strengths, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma.
That took too long to find. I found the Yuan T stats.
You found the one? Okay, yeah. But adding a seventh one, for example, the one I think was used in that example back when I was watching that video ages ago was having valor or reputation, where, so for example, elves and dwarves may have two valor / reputation, and then inherently you can use that to see roughly how people would react to those characters. But
that sounds like it would be very up to the DM.
Yeah,
based on the world.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's stuff like, if you wanted to have a character that's relatively high standing as compared to a relatively low standing character, and having an actual statistical separator between those two, that's a way of doing it, because just in general, like, once the party kind of congregates, they all sort of end up for a lot of the time sticking together, even if it doesn't make sense. Like, you have a barbarian who's got drool coming out of their face and is like constantly enraged, because they're with the party, going to fancy dress parties and stuff, just because they're there and just are being pulled along. Adding another stat you think is more worth than a new skill. True. As more work, rather. You don't really consider reputation as a stat, as per the normal 6. Creating factions and assigning players' reputation, karma, up and down is fine. The campaign just has to cater for that. Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those sort of things where,
like, you could have reputation as a charisma skill.
Possibly, yeah. Because it just kind of is your outward appearance, and then, because though that would be something that more fluctuates depending on how exactly you act. Ultimately, I understand where that whole idea was going in terms of why you would add it. Personally, however, I wouldn't, but it's an option as something that you could theoretically do. I did actually toy around with it for a while as a hero stat, or just your heroing reputation per se, because it was supposed to be like a relatively global thing, and that was a more modern sort of style campaign where you go out, you save people, people start to learn your names, etc.
So what I found on the Yuan-Ti
Yep.
is they get +2 in charisma and
Yep.
+1 to intelligence.
Yeah, because that makes them capable warlocks,
Yeah.
sorcerers, etc. And less
Average
so
human lifespan
wizards.
sort of stuff.
Yep.
They get dark vision,
Yeah,
60
fair.
feet.
Yep.
Innate spellcasting.
Right, yep.
They know poison spray is a cantrip, and they can cast animal friendship an unlimited number of times, but it only works on snakes.
That's very situational, I would imagine.
Yeah, imagine you come across a snake. Fuck yes, time to finally use my ability.
Yeah, that's fair.
At 3rd level, you can also cast suggestion.
Right, fair.
So it's like,
Suggestion's a bit more useful.
so it's like hypnotizing someone.
Oh, it's like in, what was it, Animal Book, or whatever the movie was
Jungle
called?
Book.
Jungle Book, that's the one.
Animal book.
I haven't watched it in years.
You can cast it once a long rest.
Fair.
And then they have advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects.
Right.
Now,
Wait, hang
also-
on. It's just all spells and other
They
magic.
have magic resistance.
Bruh.
And
That's
they have poison
insane.
immunity.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I don't know why people don't play Yuan-Ti more.
Yeah, like up until there, I was like, half. But that magic resistance would be real useful. That's like
Innate
real
spell
good.
casting, magic resistance, poison immunity.
Yeah, that's like
all
some
that shit.
pretty
That's
high
fucking-
tier stuff, I would say. I suppose it's all fitting. It all has to kind of fit within the
They
campaign,
get 3 language base.
though.
They
Yeah.
get common, abyssal, and draconic.
Oh, so in other words, they're getting basically everything a Dragonborn has, short of the resistance of a type and the ability to breathe.
Yep.
Like that type. Damn.
That's spellcasting makes up for it though.
Oh yeah, that's quite good. Like even presuming, like even if you decided to play a spellcaster class to fit with those stats, that's inherently like you're already having an extra spell plus suggestion coming on top. That's quite good.
Like I like the very human-looking Yuan-Ti.
Yeah, the purebloods.
Yeah, the ones that just look like humans, but they've got like, snake eyes and shit like that.
Yeah, and
They're just
so
very subtly
is that
snaky.
the proper D&D like Wizards of the Coast release
This
material?
is Volo's guide.
Ah, fair, yeah. Kenny saying, yeah, certainly don't give your like lizard folk race poison immunity or magic resist. Yeah, that's pretty OP, damn.
I know what I'm playing next game.
Oh no.
Because I've always wanted to play like a snake person, but I've just never done it.
Yeah, that's...
It's been one of those races that I've been like, oh yeah, that's cool, I'll play it eventually.
Yeah.
And then just haven't.
Yeah, I mean, the purebloods I could definitely see myself playing. I don't know if it's even possible to play the non-purebloods, just the regular Yuan-Ti.
I think you can only play the purebloods because other Yuan-Ti are full-on weird-looking snake people.
I mean, look at the 3rd edition art for the Yuan-Ti pureblood here.
So,
It's whack.
actually, it's kind of weird that they...
The 2nd
snake
edition,
man.
it's literally a snake with arms. Which, I mean, to be fair, is like what it all is, but like,
nice
2nd
little
edition,
ad you
thanks.
got there.
Which one? No, the one up here.
No, down.
Oh. Oh, vodka. Yeah, so you can't see it, but we're on the UNT page and it's advertising me vodka. Thanks. Forgotten Realms wiki. Very cool.
They know what you want.
Yeah. Some $14 wine and some Canadian Club whiskey. Canadian Club is not the worst, but I prefer it with ginger beer. Okay, you would just modify it to fit the actual animal. A snake bite, or snake person could gain benefit, bonuses to grappling, or have a poisonous bite. The protective scales, heat-seeking pits, light sleepers, weakness to cold, etc. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that. I could definitely see the weakness to cold.
Yeah.
That feels like a good balance to
Something
me.
I noticed weird about snake people though.
Yep.
So they don't have an abhuman, not abhuman, like abhuman, I guess.
Or how, like,
Lifespan, abhuman lifespan.
I mean, I suppose, yeah, they've
Like-
just got a standard human-style lifespan.
Yeah, they've got human lifespan
Yeah.
as opposed to like the abhuman lifespan, like tiefling.
They're like
SMR.
the much grander than humanoid sort
Like
of lifespan type
Genasi.
stuff. Yeah.
They all live to like 150
Elves,
kind of thing.
gnomes.
Well,
Storm
elves, gnomes,
giants.
and all those are not abhumans, but
True.
I mean like something that
Like a
has
half elf.
descended from
Yeah.
a human.
Yeah, half elves, half dwarf, or not half dwarves, half orcs, I presume.
Yeah. Well, half orcs are technically yes, but they live to like what 50?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really. We've never really played an abhuman or like a campaign where it's run in game long enough to see our characters just die from old age.
Yeah.
Usually, our campaigns are always like within the span of a couple of years. You can always modify that along with everyone. Okay, hang on. Apologies for my apparently inadequacy in literateness right now.
Literacy, friend.
Yes, I am. Apparently, I've just lost the ability to read proper words. You can always modify that along with everything else. It really won't matter much or be OP to give them regular human lifespan. Yeah, exactly. The lifespan isn't really a big deal. It's more just flavor, I'd say. I remember that
ever since they nerfed ghosts.
Yeah, I remember there was back when we did Mastermind's campaign and we finished it off, we were talking about what would have happened after the campaign.
Yeah.
So, like, because you're playing the Storm Giant, you would have gone quintessent mode.
Yeah.
My character would have just done his little thing as a gnome and just chilled out for a couple hundred years until eventually, like, dying. And I think we discussed that our two characters would probably be the last alive.
Yeah, because I think we determined it to be like what 4 of us gained immortality or something.
I gained immortality technically 4 times.
Well, I mean, like,
oh yeah, no, that's right. No, because I was a quadruple half god demigod, which demigods work differently in that campaign than they did traditionally. It was more of a demigod is a human who has gained a major god boon, and I may or may not have gotten the god boon from the Raven Queen, the Nature Goddess, the Knowledge Goddess, and I believe I was on my way to get a boon from the Lawful Good God, who was like the controller of everything. Because I was just like, yes, see, I'm pleasing everyone, and apparently everyone's like, Jin's a simp for the
God
gods,
simp.
and I'm like, bruh, they're gods.
God simp.
But
yeah, so I think 4 of us got immortality or something.
Yeah, I think
but
technically
then we broke it down to not just dying from old age.
Yeah.
But so breaking it down, getting rid of everyone who isn't immortal, because they'd just died from time.
Yeah, imagine dying from old age.
Imagine fighting time.
Yeah. I mean, you're also playing a paladin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got that because I was a Ancient's paladin. I just don't age.
Yeah. So that was a whole thing that happened.
But yeah, then we broke it down to combat potential as well.
Yeah, my character being a wizard who knew 80% of all of the spells in the game and could prepare about 20% of them at once.
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty OP. Those god boons were pretty powerful. I ended up knowing all warlock spells, all wizard spells, all bard spells, all paladin and cleric spells.
I don't think paladins have any unique spells.
Don't they have that one where it's the 5th level, like slam on the ground and has the rupture of light or whatever?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, regardless.
Flame strike?
No. It's a. Hang on, let me bring it up real quick. Paladin 5th level spells D&D 5. Oop. I mean, the smites are probably relatively. And we are back after the OBS just crashed there. Apparently, Kenny's saying that he can hear your little model, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it might be a bit of a rip, but...
I'll put it close to the mic. You can't tell me what to do.
Probably suggest don't do that. Yeah, so, okay. That's a thing. Alright, where were we? We went on a tangent. Brain powering. Okay, yeah, we were just talking about, adding an extra stat. Okay, well, regardless, so that is the main overall first heading we've got here. The second heading that we've got is mechanic modification. Now, this is usually one of those sort of things where, you see something online and you're like, oh man, that looks pretty cool. I want to add that.
That's a cool little mechanic.
Yeah, so good examples are the herbalism and alchemy pages that we found. Say, for example, the language thing that we were looking at in the
Language thing's good.
the Matt Colville subreddit, all that good sort of stuff. And it's basically, the stuff that you see and you go, damn, that's cool. That's a cool set of mechanics. You worked through a lot on alchemism and herbally through for your low magic. It's good stuff. Oh yeah, I very much enjoy it. I, as a player, like the idea of being able to sit down and spend time crafting potions and such. And all that sort of good stuff I do quite enjoy.
Just play an artificer then.
Or I could just not do that. But yeah, like having a way to do that while doing other stuff is something I do enjoy. So of course, the way that I've essentially noted it here is that I call it mechanic modification. Is modifications that change mechanics, obviously. They add new professions for NPCs and stuff that PCs can participate in. The magical tattoos, which I think weren't we talking that was Unearthed Arcana?
Yes, it is.
Fair. Artificer is one route for Alchemist. Yeah, that's fair.
Seeing as they have the Alchemist subclass.
Well, yeah. You can do the alchemy with special plants and things generally of that nature. Of course, the languages is the one that we found the other day. Magical tattoos were pretty cool. Yeah, I remember when I was preparing a campaign for a couple of the boys, which ended up just turning out to be a one-shot. That's a whole tangent, though. We ended up looking into magical tattoos as an option for characters. I think I ended up deciding to not do it, however. Just because of the people that were playing in that campaign. I should have them saved at some point.
Here it is, magic tattoos.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like they have item rarity.
Fair.
So like, common, uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary.
Is that in reference to the inks I'm pretty sure that you can use?
I don't know, complexity, ink, magic put into it.
Fair.
All that wacky shit. But the rarity is also the size of the tattoo.
Right, fair, that makes sense.
So a common tattoo is up to 6 inches in area.
Yeah.
Uncommon, half a limb or the scalp.
Yep.
Rare, 1 limb. Very rare, 2 limbs or the chest or upper back.
Yep.
Legendary, 2 limbs and the torso.
Right, fair enough. So stuff that goes across multiple limbs is generally probably going to be a lot more hard to do, which understandable, I suppose.
Yeah, like
get some like Avatar style tattoos.
Eldritch Claw tattoo.
Yeah, fair.
Pretty neato.
Yeah. Normally you make the tattoos attached to the chakras / meridians. So you can only have a limited amount and only certain types in certain areas. Yeah, that's fair. Although tattooing can be used to refine the body. That makes sense, yeah. It's like if you want to, I think because it was stuff along the lines of like, you have to get like a face tattoo if you wanted to get better eyesight, stuff like that.
Like Masquerade tattoo. This tattoo appears on your skin as whatever you desire. As a bonus action, you can shape the tattoo into any color or pattern, or move it anywhere on the skin.
Yeah.
And as an action, you can use the tattoo to cast Disguise Self. And yeah, just once a day Disguise Self.
Yeah, so it essentially gives special casting abilities to those who either already have casting abilities and would prefer to
not use a spell slot.
Yeah, not use a spell slot for it, or for something that can't cast, for like a fighter or something.
Where's the legendary one? Because I want to see what that does.
Yeah.
Oh, Blood Fury tattoo. The tattoo evokes fury in its form and colors. While the tattoo is on your skin, you gain the following benefits. You crit on a 19.
Yep.
If you roll a crit against a creature, that target takes an extra 46 necrotic damage, and you gain a number of temp HP equal to the necrotic damage dealt.
Yeah.
When a creature you can see damages you, you can use your reaction to make a melee attack against that creature with advantage on your attack roll.
Makes sense.
So that's legendary.
That's pretty good. Especially good if you're playing something like a barbarian or a fighter that has like champion that makes it so that way they crit more often. But yes, that's the whole thing. So essentially, that's generally summarized to things that will very lightly affect the world. But that, of course, moves us over to the final heading that I've written here that I think can be a good classification is the world modifications, which I'm sure, Kenny, you would say you've got experience with. Likewise, I'd like to think we've got some experience with it, where it's fundamentally changing the way that the world works, the operations, the possibilities of what happens and where, perception, and basically just changing the fundamental parts of D&D to some degree. So stuff along this idea would be, as I've got written here, removing or lowering the amount of magic, implementing new systems of castings. So, for example, using mana instead of spell slots.
Mana's cool. I'd say mana is probably a mechanic modification.
Yes and no, depending on how in-depth you want to go with it. If you want to start saying, oh yeah, there's mana potions, and there's stuff like that, and, describing why there's mana, that could be theoretically a world. But of course, it is one of those things, like we said at the start, that it is interchangeable, depending on really how big you want to make it.
I do like mana systems, though, compared to spell slots.
Yeah, I prefer mana just in general, because it has that more game vibe to it.
Like in the other campaign I was doing, everyone else was using mana, but because I was a warlock, I'm like, cool, neat.
Yeah, gotta love it. And the other one is new systems of casting or performing actions. So say, for example, if you were like, you know what, this D20, none of that, and you throw it against the wall and say, okay, well, you see how we've got...
D100 time.
Yeah, we're using a D100, or we're using D6s. So when you want to do an ability check, you use a D6. If you roll, 10 or above, that's a pass. If you roll a 12, that's a crit. If you roll 2, it's a crit fail. 2 to 5 is fail. 6 to 9 is medium success. Essentially the apocalypse system. We're essentially taking D&D combat, but you're using D6s for ability checks and stuff. Saves, whatever. Really whatever you want to do. And so that it fundamentally is both the world and the mechanics of D&D that you're changing. To which, good and bad. Really, it is what it is. But yeah, so that one, and to be fair, world modifications are probably the hardest to suggest how to balance.
Yeah.
Those are sort of those ones where you just got to play and talk with your players and see what they enjoy and what they don't.
Yeah, modify it as you go.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the other thing is, whilst I did say at the start that inherently the character modifications are the ones you can do whenever. Really, all of them you can do whenever in quotations. It's just that certain types of changes are going to make it a lot harder for the world in general, sort of thing, to modify as you go. But at least in personal experience, and now we go into anecdote time, we ran our 2-year campaign for, 2 years, obviously. Yeah. And I think it's pretty safe to say that going into it, we had no clue what we were doing.
Yeah.
Just in general, I think at that point, I think the way that we essentially picked our powers for that...
we rolled on a table.
Well, no, it wasn't table rolling.
Oh.
I basically brought up the wiki for Hero Academia and said, look through these, tell me what you want. If it's too OP, I'll tell you. If it's not OP enough, I'll tell you. And I think... Didn't you look at wind powers first, I think?
I don't think I did. Okay,
because I remember it might have been one of the other players later on when they joined who promptly got removed.
What did I go for originally?
Because I remember you settled for crystals pretty quick.
Yeah, I think I went for crystals, but I also wanted, spring limbs.
Yeah.
So it could be like a fucking cannon.
Which, ironically, you then ended up getting spring limbs in the side story that we did, ran by Matt.
Well, a different type of spring limbs, because I think...
I think you were talking compress and then as opposed to just bendy arms. Yeah. Fair.
Because in the other one I had, limbs of, a weird, springy, metallic...
Yeah.
My bones were made out of, a weird...
It's more of an it's elastic rather than springy.
Well, they were, very elastic, but tough like metal.
Yep.
So... broken bones basically aren't a thing.
Yeah. And it was one of those sort of situations where the reason that I kind of tried to basically say to everyone, hey, choose your power, was because I wanted the powers to be somewhat personal,
Yeah.
rather than just roll on a table and deal with what you get, sort of thing.
Here you go. Deal with it.
Yeah. You have a list that covers the slew of hero powers where you red marked all the ones that were BS, and there were a ton. You tend to only enjoy low mid superheroes. You don't want to do things like kick the ocean into the sun, or clap your hands and knock down the forest. Yeah, and to be fair, that was
The ocean into the sun.
I do like that. Yeah, yeah. It was one of those sort of things where we, or at least I don't know. I say we. It was more myself. After we finished that campaign, I kind of went through a couple of phases of like the first phase is like I want to start up a new one pretty soon after, just because all of a sudden we went from doing it to not doing it.
Yeah, I need something to do.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, crap, let's do it. And so I looked into a few systems. One of them was Mutants and Masterminds, which was something I was kind of keen on. But the main thing that really held me back from choosing that system was, in my opinion, everything felt too powerful, right? They had a bunch of different stuff where it's like, oh yeah, if you just roll high enough, you can punch a planet out of existence, sort of stuff. And I'm like,
Cool.
Not my style.
No.
Yeah. And so luckily, since we were using a list of abilities that had already kind of been implemented into a story already, i.e. Hero Academia, I kind of had an easy job of just basically going and being like, oh yes, well, I actually want to, just make sure things work kind of well. Also, I'm just quickly looking at here because it seems I might need to stretch it like that.
Also,
oh no, hang on. Maybe if I shrink that back down. Okay, yeah, you can keep talking.
to like the way I like my characters' power levels.
Yep.
Is I like them to be realistic, like it's in a story.
Yes.
So, like, if you think to Lord of the Rings, which is, I feel, where if you need inspiration, just have a look at Lord of the Rings. It's a classic.
Yeah.
Gandalf going along the bridge of Khazad-dûm.
Yep.
And just getting fucking yoked into the chasm by the Balrog.
Yep.
That seems like a failed deck save to me.
Yeah. Deck save or strength save, depending on whether you're talking about him trying to dodge out of the way or just withstand the pull.
Yeah. Well, it's a falling Balrog being like, hey, you.
Yeah, which Balrog's being quite heavy.
Yeah, they're large.
Yeah. It felt like it was supposed to be, if we're talking D&D terms, that particular scene was like everyone making their athletics checks to jump across that little gap, and then they get down, and as the Balrog is falling, with disadvantage to hit, he somehow manages to get his whip, which I think whips have the ability to pull things towards you?
Not as a base weapon, but there's plenty of creatures that get the ability to pull.
Yeah.
For example, Moloch, the Devil Lord, who looks a lot like a Balrog.
Yeah.
So he's got a 30-foot range whip, and if he hits you with it, you get pulled 30 feet towards him.
Yeah. So in other words, in his face.
Yeah. Where he then hits you with a bite attack.
Yeah, but it felt like as he was falling, he managed to disadvantage roll his way to pulling Gandalf down.
Yeah.
That was at least the vibe I got with that.
Spoilers for a 100-year-old book.
Yeah, pretty much.
Actually, how old is it?
Yeah, but so that's the thing, right? And in that, I sort of, since I was working off of something that had already existed, I could, basically just be like, hey, can you, guys, look at the table, look at the list here, go through them, and then since I've known, or if it's not 100, it may as well be by this point. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But having something to go off of, even just looking at the way that the game or the show works.
It was released in 1954.
Oh, so 50 or 60 years old at this point?
Yep.
Huh.
Well,
odd.
More like 70-ish almost
yeah,
now.
70, yeah.
So, close enough.
I mean, it's getting up there.
The Hobbit was 37.
Isn't the rule of copyright or something where a
Depends
work...
on the country.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it's 70 years for, I think it's America.
So what is weird here, the Silmarillion was released in 1977, despite him writing it first.
Fair. I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense that you want to you want to keep that all that stuff secret while you're working on the stories.
Well, so he wrote up the lore of the world.
Yeah.
Which is the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
And then he wrote The Hobbit as a children's story. And then he goes, I can add this into my world. So then he made The Hobbit part of the world that he made.
Yeah.
And then
all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, hey, what's about that ring that I thought of that one time?
Yeah.
And then proceeds to increment that into, or add that into his system.
So it's just weird that he released The Hobbit in 1937 and the Silmarillion in 1977.
Wait, 1937. So that's 80 years. So The Hobbit's almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
Whack. But yeah, so yeah, that whole thing, granted, I was very generous, I would say, at the start. You know, looking at Wolfgang having the ability to just manipulate fire, and Astro being able to just have telekinesis to anything he touched. That was quite powerful off the bat immediately. Not to mention the fact that we kind of strayed away, like after a month of playing and getting familiar with the situation, we did stray away from, the original story quite quickly. He probably found people didn't want to just read a huge compilation of lore. It can feel like a dump without a story to walk people through.
True.
Other people that make fantasy settings probably thought it was interesting, but that's not a large enough target audience. Yeah, I would say that sounds about accurate.
Yeah,
to
I
me.
guess it would just be like a little side project that he's doing. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just making up a world, and then it's like, oh, people might be interested in this now that
there's actually a story there.
They've looked at The Hobbit and they thought, oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Which, I mean, understandable. It's like, it's basically like just making a D&D world and then actually running a campaign in it and being like, hey, here's my list of notes. The reason it was as good as it was, though, is all the work he did for the world. Yeah, absolutely, and that's the important thing about being a DM is the amount of work you put into the story is the amount of... Well, it's relatively proportional to how much people will enjoy the world, in my opinion. If there's a world that has a lot of lore there and it feels like there's constantly things to do, then you're going to feel like you constantly have stuff to do, sort of thing. Yeah. Like, there's always more stuff to look at. There's always mysteries that need to be solved.
Warhammer, a lot of lore.
Yep.
Lord of the Rings, a lot of lore. Trying to think of more examples. There's plenty of them.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, yeah, I guess so.
Depending if... Well, it depends. Harry Potter, I don't know the inherent history behind it, but it does feel like one of those things where it hints at there being other stuff from just J.K. Rowling being like, oh, yes, let me sit here and...
Game of Thrones, a lot of lore.
True. Where she's just like, there's these things, and that has implications, and then apparently wizards shitting on the floor now is a thing. And yeah.
Wizards just shit themselves and magic the shit away.
Yeah, apart from the whole toilets thing.
Toilets were put into places like Hogwarts because the Muggles did it, and the Hogwartians were like, that seems like a cool idea, even though we just shit ourselves all the time.
Yeah, feels like that's not how money works. If there's a need, then, that need will be filled. If there's no need, then
what do you use the bathrooms for? Oh, drowning children?
yeah, keeping snakes, drowning children, you know how it be. Having scenes where people go for a bath and then dip their head under the water to hear the screeching turn into actual sound from their weird egg trophy things. You know, the usual.
I'm sure that's why they put the bathrooms in Hogwarts.
Yes, of course. Not to have baths or anything.
So that they can answer that specific puzzle.
Yes. Oh, we thought toilets were a good idea, but then gnomes invented diapers, and now we just have rooms filled with toilets no one uses. It's a shame, really. Yeah, pretty much. Like, think of how much travel you could be doing in D&D, and then think of how much you shit during the day. And now what if all that time that you were shitting, you could be traveling?
Wow. That's...
Big brain.
That's some efficiency.
That sounds hella uncomfortable. Like, oh.
I just walk while I shit. Cool life hack. Don't wear pants.
Yeah, wherever you are, don't wear pants.
Just walk and shit.
Yeah, bada bing, it works. It just works. Like Skyrim now.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
Speaking of, hype for Skyrim next year for the PS5
10-year
PS6,
anniversary.
What? 5, 6, 5,
6,
5.
7,
I'm
8,
retarded.
9, 10.
I was like,
PS10.
Which PlayStation are we on now?
We're on the 4.
Yeah, so PS5 next year. Fucking gonna play Skyrim 10-year anniversary edition.
Speaking of 10-year anniversary editions, turns out, oh shit, we were sitting there talking last night, figuring out how to install mods for New Vegas, Fallout New Vegas specifically.
Yeah.
And we were like, hang on a second, when did it come out? Oh damn, it came out 9 years ago and 362 days ago.
Yep.
Meaning, in 3-ish days, it's the anniversary. So we're going to do a 10-year anniversary stream of Fallout New Vegas.
Yep.
And it's going to be fresh.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, so I think that's our Sunday, I believe. So
Yes.
not tomorrow, not the day after, but the day after that, I believe. If I've
Yes.
calculated dates correctly. And we're going to take a few mods and stuff and do that. But yes, short plug. Chances are this release for YouTube will probably not be out for another couple of days. So I'm going to have to... I'll record like a little video and post that up whenever. But yes, should be hype. Okay, Kenny says, for low magic, you try to use both alchemists and cultivators tend to have multiple ways to subvert regular problems. It really takes a lot of travel far and safe off mundane supplies. Wait, hang on. You try to make both alchemists and cultivators tend to have multiple ways to subvert regular problems. It really takes a lot to travel far and safe off magical mundane supplies. I think I'm getting that, but I feel like I'm also having a moment of brain death from me trying to be alive. I don't know. Like, I get what you're saying, though. Yeah, apologies. My brain's shutting down at this point. That's just me. I think because we ended up falling asleep at 4 a.m. today.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes. Anyways. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over the headings, if I can get my mouse in the right position. Okay. Now here's where we're essentially, we're just winging it because I wasn't entirely sure what to write about this stuff. But suggestions for character modifications, immediately off the top of my head, you're the DM. As long as you don't make races and classes too OP, you probably can make it work. Players always enjoy having more things to do than less things to do, so realistically, like, by expanding, if you think, oh yeah, maybe I should make a bunch more spells like we were talking at the start, Ice Bolt equivalent to Firebolt, all that sort of stuff, players are going to eat that shit up because it means that, hey, all of a sudden I've got more options to create a wizard who is a hermit, but he's very fascinated in the way that plants grow.
Yeah.
So he uses a lot of nature-based magic. Players love that stuff. I would say for that stuff, usually use what you've got as a guide. You don't want to make it so a level 1 spell at level 1 can do 3d12 damage sort of thing, because that doesn't make sense.
Don't make no goddamn sense.
The highest, if I recall correctly, the highest spell cantrip specifically, damage at level 1, and before it gets a boost at, I believe, level 5, or level 6, one of those two, is 1d10, I believe.
Yep. What about Toll of the Dead? Isn't that 1d12?
Hang on, let me quickly check. Toll of the Dead, because isn't that...
I think it's a d8 to uninjured, and d12 to injured.
It is a d12, but I think it's a saving throw. Okay, so in that case, cantrip, 1 action, saving throw, take 1d8. If the target is missing any of its HP, it takes 1d12. That's actually quite powerful. Okay, yeah, it's Xanathar's. Alright, well, that's probably why I was unsure about it. But okay, in that case, 1d12. That's really the highest you're probably going to get.
Yeah, until you go just Warlock and get fucking shooting 2 beams at a time.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Warlock's got...
adding your charisma to it.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with stuff like that.
But you do only add your charisma to one of the attacks.
Fair. That makes sense.
So you do a d10 plus 5 on one attack, or plus charisma on one attack.
Yeah.
And then just a d10 flat.
Yeah. So, in other words, but that's specific character abilities and such, I believe. So that's all Warlock stuff. I don't play Warlocks.
I'll double check, because I'm not too sure.
Fair. But yeah, do what you feel is necessary. If you're custom building something and your players start abusing that, there's two ways you can really go about that. The first is you basically just say, hey...
Beat the shit out of them.
Well, three ways you can go about it, I guess. Wait, hang on. You can see it doing more damage than standard if it has drawbacks. That is also a very good point, yes.
Deal some necrotic damage to yourself, and
yeah, bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
It could take more than one spell slot. It could take longer than one turn to cast. Some of the damage can be applied to the caster, or it might lock out the spell school for several rounds after casting it. Yeah, exactly. Having
That's interesting.
massive stuff like that, and that, like, you can tell that you've probably spent a bit of time building spells that have certain stuff like this, because yeah, those are all extremely good examples of, you know, stuff to add in if you want to make it so the spells themselves actually have a bit of, you know, flair and stuff, which, yeah, it's good stuff. But yeah, don't just say, oh yeah, this damage does a bunch of damage. Okay, what's the drawback? None. There is no drawback. It's just a really good spell. Because
it's
obviously,
just damage.
Yeah,
it's
because
just good.
Yeah, because, well, I don't know about you, but whenever I'm playing a caster, generally I have, like, because you have, like, what, a couple of cantrips and stuff. If I go through my list, I always have one damage spell. I always have, like, one damage cantrip, and I have the rest are usually utility, because the damage spell I take, I'm gonna probably always be using it. So it's usually a firebolt, because I like firebolt, because fire is good in my opinion.
I think the charisma thing does go on both attacks.
Oh,
so
it's pretty fresh.
Quite powerful.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about warlocks, is that their cantrips are supposed to be pretty powerful.
An action becoming fucking
2d10
plus 10 if you have 20 charisma.
Yeah, that's quite powerful.
That is pretty fucking powerful.
That is, like, yeah, specifically building a warlock to do that, though, as well.
That's not even that specific. It's just like, get fucking Eldritch Blast, and then get Agonizing Blast.
And also make sure that you have 20
good
charisma, yeah.
Which you want anyway, because you're a spellcaster.
Of charisma, yeah.
So...
yeah, so ultimately, yeah, so there's 2 or 3 ways, depending on whether you consider beating the shit out of your players, and a good idea. My first suggestion is basically just saying, hey, this is a bit OP, can you not do that? Which...
you don't.
Yeah, maybe not the best thing to do, because players kind of hate when the DM's like, hey, can you just stop doing that thing? Because then it's like, oh, well, I can't do that thing because I don't want to disrespect the DM. But at the same time, that was like my whole plan and setup, so now I have to change a bunch of stuff.
Should have had such a fucking shitty plan then.
Yeah. The other option you can do is you just make the combat harder. Like, you know, just the enemies only die when you say they die. It's entirely up to the DM how strong they are, how much damage they do, what resistances they have, you know, all that sort of stuff. As long as it makes sense and you can justify it to the players. Being the DM who's like, oh, well, actually, this goblin has 150 HP and it does 30d7 of damage each turn.
Nice. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's one of those sort of situations. Whereas the players are just gonna be like, okay, I'm leaving, thanks.
Yeah, cool.
Goodbye.
Thanks for the shitty game.
Yeah, but like, you know, as long as you keep it justifiable, like, you know, you say, oh, there's a group of goblins, like, or whatever. One of them appears to be a lot bigger, so you perhaps think it might not actually be a goblin. It might be a hobgoblin, for example, or something even bigger than that. It appears to be covered in certain types of armor. Or it appears to have a small vial of some liquid hanging from its belt, and then as you approach and begin battle, it chugs that. As the DM, you know that's a potion of magical or
potion.
Yeah, potion of non-magical damage resistance, or whatever the fuck. You're the DM, you can do whatever you want. As Kenny's saying, intelligent creatures learn your strategy and tactics. Is Firebolt too strong? Every intelligent monster is wearing enchanted cloaks that reduce fire damage by 5. They know you're coming, they prepare for you, absolutely. And thing is, as well, is the more well-known you are, the more that this stuff is going to become common, where people are going out of their way to constantly have water around. They only fight you if they know they have water to jump into to reduce the damage or something.
Yeah, because you do become resistant to fire damage underwater. Yeah,
or even if you're just soaked in water, I presume that would be relatively the same. Personally, I would rule if you're soaked in water, you take reduced fire damage. I don't know if that's DMG rules, because
it is not.
yeah, I presume it's not. But
If you're soaked in water, I don't know, you're just wet, I guess.
yeah, but like it kind of still makes sense, at least to me, that you get hit with a firebolt if you're covered in water. What the fuck's that gonna do?
Oil has stats though.
True. I mean, even just think about it this way. There's that whole thing where you wet your hand and then you spray your hand with like some kind of flammable fluid, and then you light your hand on fire. You're protected because of the water there. Which, granted, I get that's not a fast traveling fire or magic firebolt, but still,
Yeah.
like having that barrier of water is quite convenient. So naturally, even just to have stuff like that, yeah, firebolt's too strong, then yeah. I mean, I don't really know.
If there's a lot of people that use Firebolt, they might just learn.
Yeah, exactly. Or they just learn a spell that just counters it. You would make enemy casters do things like ready in action to levitate flammable dust particles in the air when you cast Firebolt. Causes rapid combustion. Yeah, exactly. If it's like flour or something, you have it so they bring up, or I suppose you could possibly do mold earth, depending on how. Maybe gust. Depends on how you really want to flavor
I don't know.
But like, yeah, you just have a bunch of, or you're chasing a caster through the city. They go into a silo. All of a sudden, they're like, "Ha! Joke's on you fools! You're ambushed. Closed doors. You're inside.
You've been bamboozled."
Bada bing! Cast firebolt, or they cast firebolt to try and get out. All of a sudden, everything goes up in flames because of levitating or aerated flower particles.
Or magic fire dust.
Yeah, pretty much. They would use a wind-based fire spell to remove air in the square to not allow fire to exist. Exactly, yeah. There's so many ways that you can do stuff, and ultimately it comes down to just one of those sort of situations where, realistically, as the DM, it's not your job to be afraid of your players or to be scared of what your players can do. Because even just saying that I'm cringing a tad, like, it's your job as the DM to not outsmart your players, but to plan ahead and make it difficult for the players to just do what they want to do. If the enemies are no match for the players and they put explosives everywhere, yeah, exactly. Like, do you really want to roll up and just start casting fire spells in a room filled with explosives? And even if
Giving me some flashbacks.
to what specifically? Because I don't recall.
You weren't there, but little kobold taken over village.
Okay, fair, yep.
Well, it was a village, or a town even.
Yep.
Like a decent sized town with a big old keep in it.
Yep.
Taken over by some dragons.
Fair, yep.
And they had a kobold following.
Fair,
And
yep.
A group of the kobolds had taken over the blacksmith. And
Yep.
turned that into a little alchemy area.
Right, yeah, fair.
And so kobolds, they see in the dark and have like
So they knew you were
disadvantage
coming, yeah.
on seeing outside and shit.
Yep.
So it was dark in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, alright, sneaky breaky time. Sneak in.
Yep.
The wizard goes, I'm gonna Misty Step in. And I'm like, alright. So he gets spotted, which we're like, alright, cool. They're just kobolds. Let's just fucking kill them.
Yeah.
And he's like, fireball.
I can't stand wizards who abuse fireball.
The blacksmith exploded, and I don't think I was quite in there yet, so I was like, I only took like a little bit of damage.
Yeah.
But fucking casting fireball in a fucking room full of gunpowder.
Yeah.
And then that attracted the dragons.
Yeah, that's going to be a yikes from me, because that's one of those sort of situations where, like, it's not good. I can't stand wizards who specifically take spells like Fireball and Polymorph and stuff exclusively, sort of thing. Elminster in his backstory hates Fireball so much that he made a specific spell that he can cast as a reactive action that makes him swap places with the enemy caster that targets him with it. Yeah, exactly. Like, have
Nice
stuff.
homemade spell. That one's a good one.
Yeah, like, it's stuff like that where it's like, because, I mean, as the DM, I suppose this is my failing as a DM, is that generally, if we're playing D&D, I feel like I need to stick to the D&D, like, known spells, as opposed to just making my own spells. He would commonly do things like jump off a cliff while casting. I mean, yeah, that sounds spicy. But yeah, it's one of those sort of things where, as the DM, and I need to start doing it more often. But I need to just know, hey, I can do whatever the fuck I really want. I'm the DM. Like, if I say that something happens, it happens, and that's something to, I don't know, take from my failings, I guess, the tragic extent of my failings.
But also in that whole shit with the wizard blowing up the blacksmith.
Yeah.
Yeah, so dragons came, and it was just the two of us at that point.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh, we're just scouting out. Like, no one else was there at that point. So, like, oh yeah, we'll just do some quick scouting out, kill a few kobolds.
Yep.
They're just kobolds, you know, they're not going to do shit, and we're like level 8.
Yep.
So,
that's fair.
Neck minute, blacksmith fucking explodes.
Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, it really comes down to what you want to do with that. We kind of went on a bit of a tangent again, but you get the idea. Character modification. Just do what you feel is necessary. Talk to your players, and you're the DM. You can do really whatever you want. So do what you feel is right, essentially, because you're going to end up be the one being called out if it ends up going badly. So do what you think you need to do, etc. But yeah, and then so basically, yeah, test it. That stuff is not really high risk, high reward. It's more of low risk, low reward sort of thing. If things go badly, you can just change them back. Big whoop. But the mechanic modification, that's where things get a bit more, in depth, where you're making certain proper shops where you have to go to get tattoos done, or you have to go out of your way to know how to describe certain plants that you find, and you have to scatter these plants in certain places. That would be like a world modification. Because that has like lore implications. Yeah, depending on how much in depth you want to do with it, sort of thing. Because if you want to remove it, you're just changing the lore. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, what the fuck happened to all this? Oh, don't worry about it. Yeah. It's one of those things where ultimately, that's the reason I specifically put them under mechanic modification is just because, it's not as large scale as I would personally consider it, but it's more one of those things where, if you're doing stuff like that, it is good to know about it, and it's good to plan ahead. Ultimately, still not too high risk, high reward sort of thing, because you can just basically say, hey, players, I get that, I introduced this thing, but can we get rid of it? And the other thing to note is, I would give the high suggestion that if you are going to be implementing stuff like this, and this goes for both mechanic and world modifications. What is that sound? Bloody hell, there's some weird sound coming from outside. Apologies if you can hear that.
Sounds like a weird dog.
I can't tell. Okay. But yeah, talk to your players, and you should tell them ahead of time so they know what to expect in the campaign. If you just say to them, hey, I'm going to be trying out a new set of rules or a new subset of stuff to add in, heads up, there's a fair chance that could be, questionable, or it could go over maybe not the best. Yeah, it might give them the heads up, and then get their opinion on it. We used to do a thing after each session where or before each session rather, where I'd prepare a bunch of or not a bunch, but a couple of questions. But actually, now that I'm thinking back on it, I did quite enjoy doing. Where it's hey, well, a lot of them were, what does your character do on his off time? What is what is your character's hobby, sort of thing. I remember there's a whole running joke that came out of that from Canium being a DDR master and having one of the higher floor rooms just thump 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 as this 200 kilo fucking crystal man is playing DDR at whatever time of the morning.
I'm playing my DDR. Well, the DDR thing I think came from kind of like a floor trap. It was kind of like a bear trap looking trap on the floor, built into the floor.
Right, okay.
So I stepped on a tile and it fucking chonk. And I just stepped out of the way and I'm like, ooh.
Oh yeah, no, that's right, yeah, because you saved on the dex save, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And that's what it was. And I think
it was a hard save and I just critted it.
Joe said something along the lines of or Xander said something along the lines of oh, Canium's been practicing his DDR recently or something. Okay, fair. So it might not have been those questions. But regardless, after big events as well, we would have more meta questions okay, what are you looking for? Okay, like take story, combat, was it story, combat, NPC interaction, and there were two other things, and I basically said, hey, rate these in order from most important to least important. And the group generally had basically the same stuff.
Yeah.
It was combat and story are the first two. Story first usually, and then combat, which is good because those were sort of the order that we were doing stuff. Oh yeah, puzzles was another one of them, where everyone was saying, yeah, no, keep the puzzles low. We're here to beat the shit out of things and feel good doing it.
Yeah.
Let's keep the puzzles to like a relative minimum. And I was like, you know what, I'm cool with that, because that means I don't have to develop puzzles. So, but
Or you can just look up puzzles for toddlers.
I mean, I may or may not have done that at a couple of points of time. But yeah, it just sort of worked.
Mastermind did that.
Oh.
And yeah, we didn't do well.
Yeah, we ended up failing that for quite a while.
Though what was bad as well was that I got really close.
Yeah, I don't remember even what the solution was.
Oh,
no, that was the pool table one, the
it was
cue.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah. You know, it's a verb.
Yep.
It's you know, something to do with the pool.
Yep.
It's a letter or something like that. And so everyone was just perplexed, and I was like,
is it like Q or something?
And I was like, oh, is it Q or something? And I think this was I've got a feeling this was over a call, like this wasn't in person.
No, I'm pretty sure it was in person.
Because like he just kind of laughed.
No, I do specifically remember sitting around the table that was in person. But
yeah,
I think it was more that you kind of got talked over by a few of the other people. Well, and he heard it and he was like, how funny.
He heard me say Q and he just kind of laughed, and I was like, oh, so I guess that's not the answer.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we proceeded to spend like the next 10-20 minutes trying to guess the answer.
Yeah.
When I'd already said it and thought that Q definitely wasn't the
I also
answer.
heard you say that, and I was like, okay, I also am in the mindset it's not Q.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I think he laughed because
of something that someone else said, I think.
I said you can smack someone over the head with a pool
cue. Oh,
cue.
yeah, that's right, yeah. I remember
that. And he laughed at that. But, you know, it's like, oh, well, you're correct, but for the wrong reason. And so that made him laugh, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the whole thing. So, regardless, we talked about that thing, and we went on a bit of a tangent, but everyone basically came to a relatively similar conclusion. And this was a thing where it was not anonymous, but it was like, you know, everyone does their own thing. Everyone stays quiet while they're doing it. It only took a little bit of time, so it wasn't really a big thing. But it was like, hey, so here's a little survey questionnaire type thing. Tell me what you think. And essentially, we just went through it and dealt with that, talked about it, and then I knew what to work on and what I didn't need to work on. So that was the whole thing, which you can generally do as well with both world and mechanic modification. Frankly, your players are going to be... If you're playing with your players, you should know how to at least say to them, like, hey, this is, you know, yes or no sort of stuff. Like,
yeah, what do you think of this?
Yeah, like, if you're ballsy enough to try and do stuff like that, you should be ballsy enough to get their opinions. So do that, basically. But yeah, then I do also just like a lot of the extra small stuff, because frankly, when it comes to tattoos and stuff, I like just having extra, like a list of things that I can throw into random towns. Like, I always find when I'm making a town that I'm like, oh, I don't want to just make a bunch of residence houses, even though that would make sense.
Well, so the tattoos that you'd probably see would be like the common rarity tattoos. Yeah.
Unless you find a proper person who knows how to do them.
Yeah. So just like, I'd imagine they'd be pretty rare even then, but there'd just be the common tattoos, like there's an ink one.
Yep.
Like one you get on your finger and you can just write with your finger.
Fair. That's pretty useful.
Yeah. That's it.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, it's small stuff like that where, like, I mean, I'm talking specifically in terms of building towns where I always, like, I'm sitting there like, oh man, what do I add, especially in a modern circumstance?
Also, something I just remembered.
Yep.
I think in Xanathar's there's a spell which creates ink.
Huh, that's pretty useful.
So I was like, huh. fucking, how come it costs so much to write down a spell then?
I mean, yeah.
If you're just making your own ink.
I
with
think
a
it's supposed to
cantrip.
be some kind of special ink or something. I don't really know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But,
It's
yeah.
like a cantrip that just creates ink.
Yeah. Really weak magical gear is great for adding interesting keepsakes and curios, often only very useful when used in a clever manner. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's stuff
If
like
you look
that.
up the trinket table,
Yeah.
that's pretty neat.
Yeah. Or yeah, not having to do anything with combat. Because the thing is, like, a lot of people tend to write off stuff that doesn't seem to go into combat. But
Yeah. It doesn't do anything in combat, I don't want it.
yeah, but it's like, no, you can... I mean, even, jump distance and stuff can be really useful.
Yeah.
Like, sure, jump distance might not be a thing in combat specifically.
If it isn't, you're not using it right.
Yeah, well, but, like, I don't think anyone's been complaining of having a jump ring or something that they
Yeah.
can cast jump with when they need to jump over a river or something like that.
Yeah.
Or like
Jump over a chasm.
yeah, it's like just having the ability to do it. It's like, hey, this might not be something that you need to do, and it's not an attunement item, I'm pretty sure. But it's just a magical item that if you have, it's convenient. It just works. So yeah, you get the idea. Good for world building, good for making towns and stuff. I do quite enjoy, all that sort of stuff when it comes down to specifically building out towns, because I'm the sort of person who often tries to sketch out a map before I do stuff and get rough zoning in place. So it's like, here's the industrial district. You can find certain stuff here and here or whatever. So logging and whatever. And I try and actually, like, nowadays I've been actually making maps, but that has its upsides and downsides, of course.
Also, a reason that prestidigitation is so fucking cool.
Yep.
Is being able to create trinkets.
True, but it's only while you hold them.
Oh, it's only while you hold them. But the extent of what you can do here, it's like,
well, I know the one you have, or that you've used, is the pipe. It's making it so you spawn in a pipe that you can just on.
Yeah, just summon a pipe, put a bit of smoke and tobacco in it, and light the pipe.
Yeah, and it just works, sort of thing.
So you could use it pretty well in trickery.
Yep.
Like, you could make a painting. It's like, hey, look at this.
Fair.
Like,
or even
have
just
you seen this person?
Yeah. Have you seen this person making like wanted posters and stuff? I mean, hell, even like the guards rock up and they're like, "You look like this person on this wanted poster." Oh wait, pass this for a second. No, you see on this wanted poster, and as you're casting prestidigitation, it change certain features. Like,
true.
No, you see on this wanted poster, he has a moustache. I clearly don't have a moustache. His nose is a bit crooked. Bad drawing, wrong person. Goodbye.
Examples also being an old divination card bearing your likeness.
Fair.
A glass orb filled with moving smoke.
So like a seeing stone almost.
Kind of, but you just see smoke.
Yes. What is this? A burning building? I just see smoke.
A glass jar containing a weird bit of flesh floating in pickling liquid.
That sounds like something you would want a plague doctor type character to have.
A tiny gnome crafted music box that plays music.
What is this? That one bit of TNT, the Minecraft song? I don't know, I don't remember it. And by that I mean I do remember it, I just don't remember this section. Okay, Kenny says, in truth, you'd rather give a player something like a gloves of prestidigitation, so you can just use the spell when you concentrate and are wearing the gloves. It's not that OP, and you'll swap the gloves out in most cases when you find something better. All the cool stuff on shelves for mad scientists or high-level wizards is fun to have around, that's for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even if it's not useful, just having it there for like, oh yes, I have an ornament. Or like, the thing I quite enjoy in a lot of games is having a nice trophy room that you can just sit and chill in, listen to some music, and have it as like background, where you just have like a nice trophy room. And even implementing something like that in game, there's a few times that I've tried to implement trophies, or like, you managed to take down this big thing, you have this head sitting on the wall sort of thing, nice and displayed.
Yeah.
And granted, that also requires keeping a list of what trophies are had, and presuming that they're all stored when they get back to their house. But that's just a cool little thing that you can do, I suppose. Ultimately, really, again, it comes down to really what you want to do. But yeah, and then so if we move over to world modification, this is the big stuff where this is essentially purely in the territory of like, talk to your players, see what they like, see what they don't. Tell them ahead of time, definitely. You don't want to roll up to the first session of what you think is D&D. Turns out it's actually a superhero game where you've created an elf wizard and everyone else is sitting around with like, oh yeah, so my character, his name is Omega Man, and he can fly and shoot lasers out of his asshole. And when he sniffs really hard, he can smell the farts of all of the enemies nearby, sort of thing.
I've made Mecha Aristotle.
Yeah, he has big brain energy. He can think really, really hard and solve any riddle.
He can think real good.
Yeah, but you get the idea. Like, you don't want to be in that sort of situation. You need to talk to your DMs and know what's up with that sort of stuff. Kenny says one item he really liked was to give at a low level was a dagger that did +1 fire damage and could easily start a fire. Also, if you plant the blade into the ground, the hilt would release a bug repellent vapor. The second feature is mostly for comfort, but can also avoid sickness and discomfort while resting.
Pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Imagine your party's just like camping in like a swamp or something.
Oh, that would be uncomfortable.
And just gets like fucking malaria.
Yeah, that would be not good for business. But that +1 fire damage, to be fair, is quite useful. It's basically you never need to worry about a flint and steel again. It's just like, oh yes, tap, now my torch is lit, or tap, here's the campfire sort of thing.
Yeah. But, assuming that you have...
Apparently Kenny says he's had players catch malaria before. Very good. That's what I like to hear.
Paladin just vibing.
Yeah. To be fair, that's actually something that I do want to implement as well, and that would be a mechanic modification of, like, adding a full list of different, diseases that you can get.
Not enough diseases in the game.
Yeah.
And they're too easily cured.
Yeah. Just get a lesser or a major restoration.
I'm going to cast my second level spell or whatever it is.
Yeah. And that's the thing where magic does kind of completely just defeat the purpose of adding
I guess it would make it better if it's like a roll.
Yeah, I think
Cast a spell, you do a roll. It has a chance to fail and consume the spell.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, it's just one of those sort of things. Like, think Darkest Dungeon, where you can just occasionally get diseases, and they're just like, -1 to damage for strength-based attacks.
Simple shit like that.
-1 to hit with Dex because your eye's a bit wonky, sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the challenges that Kenny likes to present are not strictly monsters. There are a lot of things going on around you. If you fight in a manner favorable to yourself, and you will probably win. But when there is unfavorable conditions, it gets much more sticky. Fighting goblins face to face is easy, but fighting goblins while waist deep in swamp water and stricken with malaria, that's going to be a bit more tough. Yeah.
That just sounds like Far Cry 2.
Fair. I mean, to be fair, it's one I've noticed that in playing Breath of the Wild, where I can take on whatever at this point. I've got enough health, even though I've spent most of the game just wandering around and enjoying the view and such. I've managed to pick up enough health that I'm like, okay, any combat I'm fine. But, I mean, you saw earlier where I dropped down into the maze and then all of a sudden open the chest and there's like 4 separate turret-looking things that just aiming at me, and I'm like, fantastic.
Cool.
Start sprinting away. But, it's all circumstantial, being ambushed, being stuck in swamp water, being surrounded. It's always not the best.
Yeah, a lot of creatures have their lairs and all that shit, so...
Yeah. Well, yeah, turret chest. In Breath of the Wild, they're I think they're called Guardians or something, but essentially there were 4 of them, because I went around and looted all of them before I got the chest, because I remembered there was stuff there, because it's my second playthrough, but I forgot whether they activated before or just before grabbing the chest or after, and I thought they were before. Turns out I was incorrect. Open the chest, and all of a sudden I'm like, why are there lasers pointing at me from every direction?
Yeah, you're just walking along fighting one of them, and I'm like, hey chief, there's 3 other lasers pointing at you from different directions.
Oh. Look, yeah, because I was trying to run behind that first one, but it was unfortunate to say the least. D&D has mimic chests. That game, meme chests. Yeah, that's true. I mean, to be fair, the Breath of the Wild does also have mimic chests. There's one near the bridge, I believe, that I see every time I go there, and I'm like, mimic chest, destroy. But yeah, that's the whole thing. And it's pretty chill at the end of the day. I'm not really too stressed about it. But you get the idea, though. That's a whole thing. Breath of the Wild has a lot of good D&D stuff. specifically, the thing that I think is underused in D&D, no one uses weather enough.
Yeah,
Weather's
I know, right?
good. Like, think of how awesome of a scene you can make while you're sitting there fighting a big boss during a thunderstorm that's raging past you, and every time you
Every day, roll on the weather table.
yeah, and every time you like raise your like a metal weapon into the air, you have a chance of being struck by lightning because you shouldn't be waving metal weapons around in
Druids
a
have the
fucking
advantage
thunderstorm. Yeah. You do like having important stuff be trapped in games, though you normally let people bypass things like chest traps if they've already killed all the residents. You don't have to be stealthy at all. There's no time crunch. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, people don't use like difficult terrain. People don't use.
Yeah, because difficult terrain is as simple as like, a rock in your way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a 5-foot space, like a 5-foot square of difficult terrain.
Yeah, and it's you have to actually put in effort to get past
Or you
it,
can
sort of
just
thing.
walk around it.
Yeah, or just avoid it. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of extra space though. You're
Like,
going to have to go.
How much of that would be in caves?
Oh,
Caves aren't just flat like they're always.
Yeah,
like
like
how
people
people
just
normally do
say.
it.
Yeah, caves would be really generally difficult terrain.
Caves would just be basically entirely difficult terrain.
Yeah, you might have like a small patch that isn't, but you get the idea though. Like, because even you could theoretically say sand is difficult terrain. You know, if you
Depends
stand
on
on
the sand.
well, yeah, but if it's like beach sand where you stand on it and it slides down, that could be considered difficult terrain. Like, walking on the beach fucking sucks. Like, you have to put in.
I don't like sand.
It's rough and coarse and gets everywhere. Yeah, but like even just walking on the beach, I had to go and pick up my sister from the beach because the dog was being a bit of a twat. So basically, go over there, and she was sitting like way far away from where I could park my car. So I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, walk down onto the beach and I have to walk like a couple hundred meters along the beach, and that's not like anything that takes it out of me, but it's still like you have to put in much more effort to like walk forward, sort of thing. Especially when it's over like slopey bits where you don't have good footing, and it tends to mess up my ankles quite a bit, but it's fine. It's not really anything too bad. Kenny says caves tend to be bad to walk through, even if you have a decent path. You have to be careful of falling through crevices, especially or basically when it rains it pours. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Other thing to note: think of the Arctic and mountains and such. Think climbing. What is it? Mount Kosciuszko.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the one I'm thinking of, the really tall one.
That's in Australia.
That's wherever, I don't remember. Mount Everest is the highest one, so...
Yeah.
I mean, it's most mountains that have snow on the top. A lot of them have, like, crevices and, like, little rifts and bit that if you're not careful, you can just fall down in
Put your weight on it, the snow will collapse.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you're sitting there and a year later, while all your friends are mourning, your slightly edgy brother starts playing pranks on them, dressing up like a serial killer, and I'm referencing Until Dawn if you didn't catch that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm like looking at you as you're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, Until Dawn. That's right. Yeah. But yeah, like stuff like that. People don't use environments enough, and that's something that, in my opinion, needs to be used more. Weather is also extremely cool because cinematic shots of like characters swinging their sword through the rain, and as they like swing their blade, it like slices a bit of rain. Also, just
thinking of weather as a hazard that would be really common.
Oh yeah, like walking through like pelting rain kind of sucks.
Like you're walking, fucking, you might slip and drown in the mud if you're that shit.
I mean, assuming you have like a -7 to constant, like.
Well, if you're like a.
That's exaggeration. I know if you have -5 or negative, you can't have -6
or something.
Oh boy.
Like, oh, look at me.
Well, the other thing is heavy rain. It's a lot harder to see in heavy rain if it's going into your eyes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, everything would be heavily obscured.
Yeah.
And dark.
Yeah, especially dark, especially in like pitch black night, no moon reflection.
Not even in the night. It might be just like dim light midday.
True. Yeah.
In a storm.
It's definitely not ideal. Kenny says for his Ranger remake, he's already included choices for things like high altitude adaptation. Rangers need to be good at subverting climate/terrain nonsense. Low magic, you have a lot of abilities that only work under specific conditions. There are abilities to attempt to make or remove specific climate/weathers around you because of this. Yeah, exactly. Like, how are you going to be casting fire-based magic when it's pelting rain? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sun abilities work better in daylight, moon abilities work better in nightlight. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Moonbeam, for example, perfect example.
Imagine casting Moonbeam during the day.
Yeah, I don't even know how that would work. I mean, I suppose you can get the moon up during the day.
Yeah.
But, like, it's still a bit sus. Like,
it's kind of weird.
Yeah, so that's a whole thing. But yeah, and then just mechanically speaking and tying it back into the whole mechanical modification thing, making it so there's actual stuff that happens. The other thing, actually, that I don't know if I've talked about on stream, I did work on for quite a while a system, and I wouldn't call it complete, but I wanted to have a certain celestial events linked to, like, celebrations sort of system.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'd have, oh, bloody hell, let me quickly bring up the page, because it's been a while since I've looked at it. D&D holidays. So I've just noted here, you guys can't see it at the moment, but it's basically just certain days having certain, you know, implications, and wizards tend to benefit the most from this because I've tried to make it so each individual thing gets a certain benefit, because it would be the magic of that style getting boosted up.
Well, I guess it would be everyone that casts with that, you know?
True, yeah.
Not just the wizards of that school.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's why, I wasn't sure, because do you know what magic type bards usually cast with? In terms of, like, class, or not class, magic school is the word.
Not too sure. I'll have a look.
Okay. But because I've just presumed it was enchantment, usually. But yeah, constellations and zodiacs with astrology for important events. Wait, no, hang on. In most cases, you would make it a much weaker attack than normal. On the upside, you can make it much stronger when players meet the conditions. Yeah, exactly. Constellations and zodiacs with astrology for important events. Yeah, sort of. But more actually real. And, you know, etc. So, for example,
getting a lot of enchantment, transmutation.
Okay, so
necromancy.
That's good, because I've named the bard knight the minstrel knight. Minstrel being you know, minstrel obviously, and Nacht being German for night.
Yes.
And so enchantment, bards benefit from it.
And necromancy on the day of the Black Sun.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about that, because I was going evocation, blood moon, sort of damage output, abjuration, defense.
Well,
the opposite
blood moon
of that
could also be necromancy.
Yeah, keep in mind I do need to keep working through it, sort of thing. But yeah, it's stuff like that. But so if we come down, so the supermoon, for example, where moon is much closer. Where did I have that? Or what did that do? I don't remember. Supermoon. Apparently, I don't have
nothing.
There. Nothing. Okay, cool. I think I was just noting certain stuff that I would like to add. Yeah, so lunar eclipse, which is your blood moon, damage goes up, defense goes down, all that sort of stuff. The solar eclipse, people who are stealthy do a lot better in it because it's dark. Dark arts thrive, etc. That sort of stuff. I didn't write anything for. Oh, it's the equinox is minstrel Nacht. I don't know why, but I was like, you know what, that's a cool little thing. Summer solstice would probably do fire type stuff better. Winter solstice, probably not fire stuff. You can tell
cold even.
What?
Cold even.
Perhaps, maybe. You can tell I kind of wrote this after watching Avatar.
Yeah.
Like very shortly after watching Avatar. So ones I have written out though a lot were like the Day of Piety, which is essentially when the outer plane, or rather like all of the relevant god outer planes, kind of move closer towards the material plane, assuming it's like.
I think the upper planes is what they're.
Okay, well, yeah. The upper planes kind of like move slightly down towards the material plane, so the connection between gods and not gods is a lot easier.
Yeah.
That way you could also explain that as like a lot of the more, oh man, I saw a ghost or a vision sort of stuff, or aliens even, depending on how you wanted to describe it.
Aliens.
Now hear me out. Aliens. Yeah. So, I mean, that was something I kind of liked. And then, yeah, I also noted people also go missing around this time, because I thought that would be kind of cool. And then I did have one specifically for monks where they had the Day of Id and Ka, which were one where Dex goes up and Wisdom goes down, and the other where Wisdom goes up and Dex goes down. It's like a sort of yin-yang style sort of thing, I guess. I didn't really write too much regarding what the fuck that's about, but yeah, that's a whole thing. Yeah, if you use them in your low magic as well, there are good conditions that cause special effects. Blood moons give good for vampires, blood abilities and other stuff like that. True, does fit the name after all. There's a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. I was going for a kind of a light sort of thing where it's like small benefits, though. Again, it's something that I haven't really put too much work into since I was developing this around the same time where I was toying around with the idea of a shield hero style campaign.
Also,
Yep.
Something that you can do is have a lot of inspiration, like from mythology.
Yep.
So, in Norse mythology, Draugr are created from like being buried improperly.
Right, fair.
So if you're not buried on hallowed ground, which in D&D all the temples and churches and shit would be hallowed ground. So if you're not buried in a hallowed area, your corpse could come back as like a zombie or some shit.
Fair. That could actually be. Oh, actually, hey, I just had a cool idea. Right.
So it's just like bury your dead properly, or else you're gonna get
get this right.
molested by undead.
Temple becomes no longer hallowed ground for whatever reason. All of a sudden, people are still dying and they're being buried there. Undead start rising up. Bada bing, quest prompt.
Yeah.
Bada bing, easy. That's actually I could get down with that.
That's pretty neato.
Yeah, because then people have to firstly figure out why the fuck are there undead here.
Why the undead a thing?
Yeah. Secondly, they go, oh, okay, so you find a note that says like, I think like from someone in the church saying, oh, I think our church is no longer hallowed. I don't know why, but something's happening. Blah blah blah. Bad things are happening, etc. Then you have to go down into the bottom of the church or something. You find out that there's an altar that someone has broken or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how to make, because there's a spell you can cast as a player.
Yep.
That creates hallowed ground.
Ceremony, perhaps?
Could be, but I feel like that's too simple.
Yeah, I do think I've seen the spell.
I think ceremony is just like a funeral ceremony.
Funerals, marriages, stuff like that.
Yeah, so if you cast ceremony on a corpse...
Kenny says consecrate.
Consecrate,
that does sound right, yeah. And Kenny also says if you have high tide / low tide, and it draws the moon to the planet or away from it, then you could have it to do the same to everything else floating around the planet. True, all the other planes and such, if you wanted to go for a solar system style sort of thought pattern of how the planes would work, even though, like, and that also depends on how you want to build your architecture of the planes and such.
Cosmology.
Yeah, the cosmology, that's the word. Which, this is just getting into custom doing all that sort of stuff. Like, I know we've talked about it while making your map.
Yeah.
The fact that the way to perceive yours is essentially just like a big sandwich, where in the center you've got
a 4-dimensional sandwich.
Pretty much, where it's like you've got material plane,
underneath
is like
toothpick with a little olive on it.
Pretty much, yeah. The olive being the sun, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I guess that'll work.
Yeah. But yeah, and then stuff like that. Basically how it'd be.
But yeah, so ceremony would just be kind of like a mini version of that spell we're talking about.
Yeah,
it's just fair. Like undead can't touch that body for like 7 days.
7 days, fair. But yeah, like even still, that's like that immediately like comes off the top of my head or off the top of I suppose all of our heads as a possible like plot hook or something if you're trying to be like, hey, bada bing, I want to throw some undead in here, so run along, come on kiddies, figure that one out, sort of thing.
Yeah, like
that inherently has a lot of potential. Plus, also then you go to a very what's the word, Castlevania style town where there's like a bunch of like everything's dark, everything feels kind of messed up, and you could even possibly trace that back to maybe a vampire if you wanted to go full Castlevania with it.
So I think the spell was Hallow.
Hallow, okay, fair.
A 60
as
foot
opposed
radius.
to Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
It's an expensive spell to cast, but
is it?
So one, casting time 24 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Verbal somatic material.
Was this the one where you have to cast it every day for a month, and then that makes it permanently hallowed ground?
Not too sure. No, it's one cast until dispelled.
Oh, okay, fair.
So herbs, oils, incense worth at least 1,000 gold, which is consumed.
Oh, it just occurred to me that theoretically, upon death, a character does become no longer able to or to focus on their magic. Hence, I think all spells dispel regarding that, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think that's quite the case, because I think until someone comes up and dispels it.
Oh, okay, fair. Because I was going to say perhaps you could have it so the Pope cast it, and then the Pope is
Pope
dead.
dies, and then yeah.
Yeah.
See what you mean, but I don't think that's how it's intended.
Fair.
A 60-foot radius area is infused with holy or unholy power. Celestials, fae, fiends, undead, and elementals cannot enter the area unless you choose to exclude one or more of these groups upon casting.
Do you think as well that
you can also bind an extra effect to the area: courage, darkness, daylight, energy protection, energy vulnerability, everlasting rest, extra dimensional interference, fear, silence, or tongues.
bloody hell, what level of spell is that?
5th.
Damn, that's pretty solid.
So every time like a church or a temple is created, you need to call in like a
High-tier
powerful
caster.
priest or some shit to
Wait,
cast this.
who gets this? Is this clerics? Okay, so 5th level cleric spells, that's level 9, I
Yeah.
believe. No, hang on. No, 5th is 11, I believe.
Is it?
I think it's every
yeah.
second. It's every second on the odd number, I'm pretty sure. Cause,
Yeah, so you're gonna need a big boy to come in to cast that spell.
yeah, or if not like high tier, like at least medium tier sort of person.
Yeah,
someone who's capable.
Or well, I'm sure they'd even like shit out scrolls of Hallow and shit.
True, yeah.
So you
Though
don't
that
need-
also that's also another thing that you need, that I could say, or we could say, was a mechanical thing, a mechanical way of changing it. How does one make scrolls? Now, this is a question
NPC magic.
Yeah, so that's something that myself and Mastermind have talked about, because there was a point back in the day during that campaign where, because I could just know basically every spell, where I was like, in my off time, can I just produce a fuck ton of spells? And can I like make a clone who also just produces a fuck ton of spells?
Yeah.
And just like have like a full like, you know, well, what's the word? A sweatshop of spell production,
Out of your
essentially.
clones.
Using clones of myself. Needless to say, we didn't get it that efficient. We only got a couple of spells being produced, but that was still a thing. Okay, Kenny says, low magic, a lot of the stuff you have floating in outer space. It's not just meteorite, matter, and planets. Creatures and objects can abound, and if they're drawn close, they might end up on the planet. That gives off very much eldritch sort of style energy of like warlocks and such. Though object material is the most common, because sky space metal is such a common trope, and I like it. Oh yeah, we've got our own space, like science metal.
Everyone
thing.
loves a bit of space metal.
Yeah. In that one, that was a whole long story, but basically
Everyone loves their nickel, iron, and cobalt. That's what meteorite's made out of. Chief.
Okay, yeah, I was like, is there a joke there that I'm missing?
No, it's just that's what it is.
Okay, fair. That makes
it's
sense.
a statement.
Yeah, but we made a combination of stone and steel that we called Stoll, Stoll, because we were like, oh yes, or rather, I was like, oh yes, I need something that's hot enough that a person
cannot be melted by
thermite. who Matt can't, or what of which Matt can't melt using thermite, of which he can produce. Yeah, needless to say, that was a bit of a misjudgment on my side. I mean, we ended up actually fixing it before the end of the campaign, where he manipulates metal and also fire, so we could still do thermite, just less so, not inherently. That was a whole thing that happened. Makes it so you can have possible star matter ridden fields and days where the sky comes alive, so people hide during the process, then rush to harvest these high-grade materials. Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like where you'd get some
mithril.
Some
adamantite.
Tome of Foes creature. Star spawn.
True.
Have you seen Star spawn?
I have not. They sound horrible.
They are. Well, I haven't looked into them too much, but they're weird.
I'm looking them up now. Tome of Nose. Star spawn. The Elder Evils. One of the old horror movies you like, the alien asks what happens to metal at 12 or 13,000 degrees. Hang on. Now looking for a material he could use to get home. Fair. Yeah, I mean, light speed travel would probably be quite hot, I would imagine. Okay, so it looks like the Elder Spawn, if that's the image of it, which I don't know if it is,
Yeah, it is.
looks very much like some kind of weird eldritch entity.
Yeah, they're
it's got worms for
aberrations.
hands.
Yeah, so they just look kind of like cultists.
Yeah.
But they're kind of weird looking.
You haven't in Darkest Dungeon. You haven't gotten to the Darkest Dungeon yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
Ooh, so it gives off that same vibe as the enemies you fight in there.
The flesh people.
I mean, technically, all people are flesh people.
Well, yeah. The meat men.
I mean, yeah, kind of. Okay, we're just going on images. Starspawn Screamer. That doesn't look.
I haven't seen that art.
What is that? It's probably a good thing we're not showing this on stream.
Looks like a dingus.
He got a dick. Fair.
So that's the Worm Man.
Fair.
That's
Yeah.
also art of the Worm Man. It's very Lovecraftian kind of.
Yeah, I definitely see the Lovecraft.
I'll just describe this image for you. It looks like a humanoid cultist robes.
Yep.
But instead of limbs and a face, just like
Worms.
tentacles and worms.
Yeah, he's got like a nice porcelain white mask sort of thing. It is wacky. But yeah, so needless to say, that could be a possible way to get a few interesting situations going.
Actually, that could be like a good little reveal. If it's like the party's just like, oh, they're just cultists, we can beat the shit out of them.
Yeah, and then they're like,
Starspawn.
Psych, worms for hands.
Turns around, grabs your face with his weird worm hands.
Yeah, not really a fan of the worm hands, but definitely good for that horror aesthetic if you want to go for that, like, there's something constantly looming over you, Cthulhu-style sort of stuff.
Yeah, actually. Good thing for that is, so a kraken is actually way more intelligent than, you initially think of a kraken being.
Yep.
Like, you think kraken, big spooky squid.
Yeah. Of which it is, but it has big smart spooky squid. That's the kraken hatchling. River kraken. Oh, that's horrifying.
It's weird looking.
Yeah, that's spooky.
So krakens just kind of, each one looks different, I think, in the lore.
Yeah.
They just kind of, like, no two krakens look the same. They look like big squids. They look like weird fish things.
This one has an intelligence of 22 and a wisdom of 18, charisma of 20. This is challenge rating 23.
That's kraken.
30 strength in 11 dex, so the dex is the weak spot. Given it's massive.
It's gargantuan even.
Yeah, const is 25, intelligence is 22, wisdom's 18, 20 charisma. So it has immunity to lightning, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical. What?
Who knew that it had immunity to lightning?
Yeah, it's not like we've dealt with someone who cast, level 15 lightning? Also, don't ask. Oh, rather, we'll answer it in a moment. Level 15 lightning, underwater, at a kraken. Ha ha ha, who would have done that?
Oh, how could that go wrong?
Spoiler, it's neither of us. One of the most entertaining dark horror games you have seen is The Sunless Sea. It does a good job in making madness a thing. As you explore this darkness, if you turn your searchlight off, madness increases. If you turn it on, it attracts monsters. That sounds fucking cool.
It's actually cool. Look up some images of it.
Wait, have you seen this game before?
Yeah, I have.
Sunless Sea.
That's the 2D submarine one, yeah?
Ooh, yeah, it kind of looks like it. That looks fresh.
Is that the one I'm thinking of?
It looks like it. Hang on. Images. Ooh. This one.
So I'm thinking of a different game, but it is... Yeah, I have seen this one.
This looks like one I might actually want to buy. That looks cool.
The one I was thinking of is the submarine where it's multiplayer.
Yeah.
Each person is a crew member that has to do jobs like load the cannon.
Oh, you're thinking of... what's it called? The one that the boys are playing. Why am I blanking on it? Okay, hang on. Keep talking while I'm trying to remember that.
One person pilots the submarine, one person loads the cannon, repairs and shit, and then when you can...
Sea of Thieves. That's the one.
No.
What?
No. That's a boat. I said a submarine.
Oh, submarine. Okay.
Submarine. One
In
person,
that case, I've got no clue.
Yeah, one person, you get a certain amount of power, and you can assign the power to, engines, guns, searchlight, all that kind of stuff.
Fair. Ooh, that's cool. Yeah, so I just pulled up Steam real quick. I'm just going to add this to my wish list. I'll keep an eye on that and see if it goes on sale. There's apparently Sunless Skies as well, which I'm guessing is like
It's a train.
it's a train.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen.
Oh,
So this is like a weird time steampunk thing. Everything's been like all weird, and you're
Sail
in like a flying train.
Betray your queen, murder a son. Huh. Okay, well I'm adding this one to my wish list too. Cool. That looks kind of cool. Fair. It's basically the same thing, same company and feel. Both should be fun enough. Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like something I would be down to do on stream as well. Get the two of us do some that new series we were talking about of the two of us playing games and stuff. Could do. I'm down. Yeah, that looks pretty fresh. Yeah, because I very much do enjoy that horror feel, especially in D&D. It's very difficult, I think, to pull off, and I can't exactly guarantee I've done it good myself in the past, but I've definitely tried.
I think so. With the reason I brought up Krakens, is because they have the ability to create deep scions,
right?
Which are just anyone that a Kraken can get their mitts on.
Yep.
Like if someone has fallen from a boat, or someone wanders a bit too far into the water, then the Kraken can offer to save them in exchange for them being spies for the Kraken.
Yeah.
So it's a shape-shifting fish man.
Right, fair.
So they look like they did before, they were transmogrified.
Yeah.
So they just look like a commoner, but they've got like fucking 20 strength, and they can shapeshift.
That sounds like some shit you would have to deal with. Like you go to like a port side sort of
port town, and there's just a bunch of them.
Yeah,
that's like some Shadow over Innsmouth shit.
Yeah, I mean, that I could definitely see being pretty fresh.
There's a lot of stuff that you can do with Shadow over Innsmouth kind of stuff. Like you could do this one not even near the water, but like Slards.
Oh yeah, we don't ever use Slards too much. It's one of those ones where like we're all like, oh shit, it's Slards, and then we never actually deal with them.
Oh fuck, Slards, and then we never actually fight.
Yeah, because you lose all of your stuff from a free. I want to say freak deck of many things event, but I wouldn't really call it that necessarily.
Yep.
It was more of just you pulling from the deck of many things and getting unlucky.
That's how it be.
Yeah, we had a Slard in a jar. Except it was like a fully grown Slard, so when you open the jar, it comes out fully grown.
Yeah, so it's an iron flask.
And it was a black Slard, I'm pretty sure, wasn't it?
Death Slard.
Death Slard, so even worse.
So we were kind of like, oh, don't want to open it because don't want to get fucking molested by a Death Slard.
Yeah, pretty much.
Then, it wasn't until like after the campaign that I realized if we let it out of the iron flask, it obeys the wielder of the iron flask.
Wasn't it for only an hour?
Yeah, but that's long enough for you to be like, give me your gem.
Oh, true,
because Slards have the mind control gem in their head.
Yeah, though it depends on how Mastermind would have done the whole situation, because theoretically, if it would have hurt it to take the gem out, then it might be able to resist commands like that.
Yeah. So
it all comes down to really how that would have been done. I, as the player and knowing my character, would have been like, hey, maybe don't do that. Like I get what you're going for, but don't do that.
Gets a pet Slard.
Yeah, which would have been pretty cool. We just have a Slard chilling in the underside of the castle that we inhabited.
It's the guard Slard.
The Slard guard.
Yeah, just imagine losing that crystal. Oh fuck.
That would be concerning.
I don't know what happens if the crystal is destroyed.
The Slard probably dies, if I'm not mistaken, or it loses its mind.
Maybe. I'll look it up.
Yeah. But yeah, so long story short, we went on a big old tangent, but mechanic modification, it's good. It's pretty fresh. World modification, I think we were talking about as well. Yeah, it's all really comes down to having an idea and knowing how to execute upon it, thinking about the idea quite often, and knowing really how you want to do it. D&D is a style set in a certain way, and there are a lot of other campaigns and games out there that you can try that will accomplish similar things and stuff that you can read from and pick up ideas from. I can't remember the name of the system. I think it's like the Ep.6 system is another cool one that you can do. You like resourcing parts of monsters in games. If players build a base using a ritual summon monsters in an area that you've killed and had the parts for, you think it's a fun way to accomplish having pets. Yeah, exactly. Like, thing is, I'm one of those sort of people who really enjoys the base building aspect of like D&D and Minecraft and other games like that. Even Breath of the Wild, I made sure I saved up enough on my second playthrough that when I remembered where the place was, I just roll up. I'm like, hey, so I want to I want to buy this house. Give it to me now, please, and thank you. You want 3,000 rupees? Okay, well I have like 7,000 in my bank. Thank you. Give me that, and also I'll take all the upgrades. Thanks. Cool. So that's the whole thing.
So I found the Slard page.
Yep.
And I go, oh yeah, control gems, and it says as the Slard emerged from the spawning stone, and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
It's the whole stone in limbo that it comes from.
I go back and read the bit of lore on it.
Yep.
So, Primus, the god of order and like the clockwork world,
yep,
created a giant geometrically complex stone, yote it into fucking limbo,
yep,
to stop the spread of chaos. And the side effect that it ended up having was so the chaos energy that's just going around everywhere.
It gets sucked in and then comes out as floods.
Yeah, it kind of sucked it up and then added enough order to it to give it structure.
That's concerning.
Which is a Slard.
Imagine a D&D quest to go and destroy that thing.
Yes.
That would be quite cool, I imagine.
Kind of makes sense why they have the control stone.
Yeah.
It's like a shard of the stone.
Order, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, yeah. Yeah, makes it so when you run back to your hideout, you're much harder to finish a party off. True. Well, yeah, that's the other thing is, like, just inherently, like, having a place where the players can feel that can call home and store things is, as a player, really cool and chill and fun, because you can then do base building stuff and store things and have trophies. But then on the other hand, as the DM, it's even more fun because what happens when all of a sudden you subvert the safety that the players feel by then having the base be raided as they would raid a monster's base.
Bruh, I just got reminded of the campaign where I'm a warlock.
Yep.
We just came back from a big old journey.
Yeah.
To the Elven Tree City that we were like Tree Port City.
I actually remember when the DM was building that years ago.
Yeah.
And we were talking about fall damage and falling off the Tree City.
Yeah. So we were we just came back. The bard was like felt that it was time for that character to leave.
Yeah.
So he liquidated all the
the assets and stuff.
Assets for the brothel that he owned.
Yes.
And he just skedaddled back to his homeland.
Yeah.
So we all got a bit of dosh from it, and he went home. And we're like, all right, cool. Better go see the king because he's requested us.
Yeah.
And before we went there, we're like, because the brothel is gone, let's go buy like a new house. So we bought a nice house in the upper level of the tree.
Yep.
Like, well, it was a house situated somewhat above the market area, so we can just drop down to the markets.
Yep.
And as soon as we paid for it, we're like, cool. Go up to see the king. Scripted event happens.
Dragons rock up and burn the entire fucking place down.
The Tree City.
Yeah. So, feels bad. Yeah.
Everyone burns to death, and we're like, damn,
yeah, I imagine the DM was just like, well, as you guys were building or getting your house, the DM's probably sitting there like, damn.
I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, like, as the DM, it's not my place to say it, but I've already scripted out this thing to happen, so feels bad, but...
Well, like, we spent, like, over 1,000 gold on this fucking thing.
Well, like in Minecraft, should have built it out of stone. Like, stone's gonna do much in a fucking dragon fire.
Yeah, stone withstanding dragon fire.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you get a kiln.
Yeah. So, yeah. City destroyed after we got our new house.
Yeah, gotta love it. But yeah,
I think we've been on the move ever since, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
We haven't settled down since because in that campaign as well, we sort of wrapped that up and then had a soft reboot of the same campaign set 30 years later,
Yeah.
where I think there are only 2 of the returning characters.
Yours being one of them.
And, well, the other one was, like, sent to hell, and then returned.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because he died and he made a deal to get reincarnated or whatever.
So to him, it was, like, not that long that he was in hell, or
Yeah.
a long time. I don't know.
Bit of column A, bit of column B.
Don't know how time works.
Yeah.
So he came back and was like, oh, well, a lot of shit's happened.
Yeah.
My character's just been walking around the world for, like, 30 years, just like, fuck.
I mean, you're playing a tiefling, aren't you?
I'm playing an Asimar.
Asimar, right. Which they, if I'm not mistaken, age at half the speed of humans, I think.
It said they age at the same rate as humans,
Right.
but they live to about 150.
Okay, that's probably where
and
I'm
they
being double.
don't suffer from human flaws. Like,
So in other words, they wouldn't start like. It's sort of odd, right? Because if we're talking scientifically speaking, not suffering human flaws means that your telomeres would still be chill, meaning you won't become old and wrinkled. You'd still be in your prime for essentially your entire lifetime.
Yeah, I think it's like you'd look very good for your age.
Yeah, definitely. Look like John Wick, but without that, well, not in that image where he looked like he was starting to lose life force.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, Keanu Reeves doesn't age, and then I saw that picture of him and Bill and Ted, and I'm like, oh.
He hasn't
no.
sucked any souls out recently.
Yeah, he hasn't vampired some life out of any people for a while.
No, still. Like, yeah. I mean, I could go on a tangent about being keen for the next John Wick movie, but I feel like it's safe to say I think we all are keen for the next John Wick movie.
Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, I'm willing to do it for as long as people are willing to watch it.
And God knows I'm willing to watch that.
So...
Yeah, well, because that actually kind of brings me back kind of full circle to base defense and stuff. John Wick 3, they basically had that massive scene.
Yeah, the little fortress.
Yeah, where they were doing...
The siege of the Continental.
Yeah, and that was like because I watched that relatively... Actually, I think we watched it that one time a while ago. Where, the TV was there and we were sitting there watching it. Yeah, and we just had a good old time watching it. I was sitting there just like... Because it was the second time I'd watched it, but I was like... Thinking about this in terms of D&D, this would be hype. Like walking through your base, taking out people who are sieging it. That would be awesome.
I saw a video of like body armor manufacturers reacting to John Wick.
Yep.
And one of the guys said that he was watching John Wick 3 with his girlfriend.
Yep.
And in the movie they're like, oh, 9mm major. And he like leans over to her in the theater and is like, we're making armor that can stop that. And then next scene, all the guys come in with the heavy armor and just like eat up tons of 9mm major.
And he's just like, oh. I mean, yeah, like that's the sort of thing, because, you know, I'd like to think that, and I can't speak with certainty, but I'd like to think that the people making John Wick have like done their research and know what's happening at the moment in terms of all that good sort of stuff.
You're just like, ooh wee.
Yeah. But yeah, as Kenny says, raiding places and fighting off sieges is fun. Exploration, you hope, becomes more important for more players as you watch streams. Yeah, that's something I definitely have noticed. I ran a one-shot with a couple of the guys that are sort of half part of the group. I say, like, a couple of them are part of the group. A couple of them are their friends that aren't really part of the group that we usually play with. And one of the guys in the group was DMing that, and he's a big fan of Crit Roll. And you can very much tell how it's influenced his style. You know, the very intense descriptions. You always see people who watch Crit Roll always asking the question, how do you want to finish off the enemy, sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like, how do you want to do it, sort of thing? So that's something that I recognized when I saw it. Like, all that good sort of stuff. And the thing is, like, yeah, streams and podcasts are extremely good for inspiring people to play D&D. There was the podcast that myself and Xander both listened to. Well, Xander got me listening to, The Adventure Zone. And I know I've shown you, like, the first 5 minutes of the first episode. And it was pretty good, at least in my opinion. Like, or rather, it takes, like, a couple of episodes to get fully into the motion of it because they're new to it, so they're just talking about it a lot. But yeah, once you get into it, it's good. However, yeah, Kenny, I can agree with that. I didn't actually really get into crit roll. It was one of those sort of things where I had that initial like, oh hey, there's what's a face who did Ellie in Last of Us.
Hey,
cool.
there's
There's Matthew Mercer. There's yeah, and they
it's
like
McCree.
yeah, there's a bunch of characters I recognize, but it's like okay, cool. But like I started watching it season 2 where I didn't really particularly know what was happening, and it was sort of difficult for me to stay engaged on it, especially with 4-hour streams as a uni student. It's a bit tough because I'm one of those sort of people who, if I'm going to invest in something, I want to invest as much as I can. And so it's sort of a weird position where I want to invest in listening to the streams. Like I don't want to stop halfway through because I know if I stop halfway through, I'll stop listening altogether. And then all of a sudden, I'm like sitting there writing out lectures and doing assignments and this and that. So it was a bit difficult. I might come back to it in the future and do a full proper listening through of like Crit Roll season 1, season 2.
So also on the
all that
topic
stuff.
of base sieging.
Yep.
Yeah, it gives like an excuse to use all those cool siege weapons that are in
True.
the DMG.
Siege weapons, and it gives an excuse to have more of the protection from evil and good, and protection from this and that type spells. Because like most of the time, unless you're specifically built into doing that stuff, you're probably not going to have it, or at least personally I would.
Protection from good and evil is a fucking dope spell.
Yeah, but I don't think you can move where it's placed, can you?
No, protection from good and evil is like a self-protection spell.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of an AoE then in that case.
So, protection from good and evil is you cast it on yourself, or I think you can cast it on others, but
yep.
It's single target touch spell.
Oh,
concentration. Fair. And basically, hold on, let me, it gives disadvantage to hit you, for...
anything that's evil or good. But yeah, in the meantime, while you're looking that up, the other thing I'll note is it gives an excuse to make your ground hallowed. It gives excuse for that sort of stuff as well. You know, all that sort of like ceremony and all the ones that like feel more closer to home, defensive rather than attacking places.
So it's concentration 10 minutes, and it gives you gives creatures disadvantage to hit you. And those creatures are aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead.
Okay, so most things that aren't beasts or humanoid, essentially.
Yeah, if it's not a beast, dragon, humanoid, giant.
I think that's about it. Maybe slimes. There was
slimes. Yeah, slimes.
But even still, what level spell is that? First?
Yeah.
I was thinking that was a much higher level spell. Damn.
No, it's a paladin spell.
Oh, that would be why.
Yeah, just cast it as a paladin, so you're just oh yeah, now you have disadvantage to hit me, fucker.
That does explain it, because I don't play paladins too often.
Yeah, you just become a fucking tank, because you have high armor, and they have disadvantage to hit you.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, so we've gone on a bit of a tangent. I think the next main important heading we should talk about is the testing of this sort of stuff. There are, I think, 2 main testing ways that we really do things. The first is doing one-shots. I'm sort of half-half on one-shots. I think they need to be ran by the right person for me to enjoy a character properly.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it can be difficult for me to personally enjoy a character or want to play a character again if I've had a possibly negative experience with it, so I usually don't go with one-shots. But I know we do a couple of one-shots every once in a while just to like test out new ideas and like get ourselves or the boys together and familiar with some ideas and stuff.
Yeah.
And even just as a break from a proper campaign, like we did a one-shot at one point where we made some new hero character campaigns, hero characters for the campaign for the one-shot.
Yeah.
As like a group who got stuck underneath the massive collapsed city that was down in the south. And essentially,
I don't think I was in that one.
You might have been away. That might have been the reason that we were pausing that session or something for a break. And I think because your character, we needed you to be there for one of the major story events, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, it was one of those things where one-shots are good and they're good for testing out stuff and finding out what works and what doesn't. You know, if you're not sure of something, test it out. Get the players to do or to invest pretty heavy or you have like, I'd say the way I'd do that essentially is I have like 5 players. 2 of them invest heavy into something, or one of them invests heavy. A couple of them are like half-half, and one of them doesn't do anything at all. If you're specifically running a session to focus on that specific thing, then run it, see how everyone likes it. If people like it, then they can do it. If people don't like it, then they can not do it. If someone played a character who doesn't like it and then is like, oh, that actually looks cool, then they can play a character in the next campaign that does want to do it.
I had a wacky character concept.
Yep.
It's double Unearthed Arcana.
Oh no.
It was
oh no.
It's not too overpowered, but well, theoretically, I know I didn't have to didn't get to test it.
Yeah.
But it's so there's the Wildfire Druid.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah, Wildfire Druid. It says that you're basically gifted a fire spirit, and that's how, or you obtain a fire spirit somehow, and that's kind of your gimmick, that you summon a little fire boy.
That feels like it could go very quickly into the direction of cringe anime, depending on how you flavored it.
Yeah, I just had it as like a little fire moose or something.
Yeah, fair. It's your little Patronus type thing.
Yeah, little flaming Patronus.
Yeah.
But then there's the Warlock of the Genie.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, if he follows like a fire genie, and that's how he got his mitts on the fucking little spirit.
Yeah, it sort of has that combo style that like for example the Dragonborn I made, who was a haunted one, but he's an ancestral guardian barbarian. So his whole thing is that he's haunted by the guardians that help him. So he's like, ghosts, but also they help me, so cool.
Like, I feel like he'd go like level 1 druid, level 2 druid, level 1 warlock, level 3
druid.
Yeah. Because that, like, he's like, oh yeah, I'm a druid. Makes a pact with a genie to get a little fire spirit, and that's how he becomes a fire druid.
Yeah, fair. Kenny says with one shots he likes to test things and do adventures that you would normally never do. Example is all the characters are raised undead under a necromancer. Instead of leveling, you gain more powerful undead templates as the adventure is completed. In the end, the party decides if they want to remain with the necromancer or kill the necromancer escaping. Yeah, exactly. Like small little story stuff that can be ran in about 6 hours, sort of stuff. I know there's a story that I was told of some of the other boys who had done an all bard game where they all played bards, and apparently it was certainly interesting. But it was one of those things where they're like, let's maybe never do this again. And I was like, yeah, that's probably fair. Like, it definitely seems like the sort of thing where that might be a bit painful after a little while.
Yeah.
You get inspiration, and you get inspiration, and
Everyone's
get inspiration.
Inspired.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was a whole thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, it did seem pretty interesting. But yeah, it's just testing out concepts and stuff, seeing what works. I do have a campaign. Since and this happens every time that I start talking about my hero campaign, I want to play something similar again and get all the boys together and have a proper story written out. I wouldn't mind doing, and this is very anime, but doing a D&D style campaign where where you're playing essentially as yourselves. So you build Kris in D&D with your stats of whatever class. Assuming if you were thrown into Fantasy World X and you had the choice of Warlock, Wizard, whatever, the fuck, like all that, everything, what would you personally choose to become?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I know that we've all had the discussion, because I keep asking and making the discussion of what do you think you fit in as, but the question is more nowadays, what would you want to be?
Yeah.
Like, if you have the choice, what do you want to be? And, like, this is assuming that you would then start progressing and getting the stat ups of that variety.
Like, I feel like what I relate to most is probably, like, a lore bard.
Yeah, I feel like that's been a common thing that basically everyone has been like, yes, that's what we feel you would be as a person.
Lore bard.
But what would you want to be? Like, and it's cool if you just choose lore bard as what you would want to be, but if you had the choice of barbarian, fighter, cleric, druid, paladin.
Kind of like Ancient's paladin. That'd be neat.
I kind of figured you would go somewhere towards paladin because, and I mean, the question is not really rigged, but it's sort of, kind of fits in with the fact that everyone, or at least upon my note, like I had that whole theory that like people tend to choose the class that they feel they would most like to play as a person, or they would most like to be. You being probably a paladin. I played sorcerer because I like sorcerer and I like the idea of sorcerer. Not because it necessarily fits in with me, even though apparently I've been told it does. I just like sorcerers because they're cool. And that's what I would personally choose to be. Xander, for example, I would pin him for probably a rogue at this point.
Yeah.
Despite the fact he's very tall and very visible.
Yeah.
Tall, skinny, noticeable.
Stands out.
And up. Usually a lot taller than both of us. He's got a solid 2 inches on both of us, and we're both like 6 foot. So, yeah, that's the whole thing.
That's like 6'2".
Yeah, exactly. Kenny says for remake purposes, he's tried to make sure every class is something you would want to play. Otherwise, you have to fix it. No point making a class one does not think would be fun. Exactly. Cough Ranger, cough.
Thanks.
I feel like I think I did make a note earlier that because I know that you were remastering a bunch of that sort of stuff. And I was sitting there thinking of what you probably would have done to the Ranger, because I know the Ranger's got a few issues. But yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, it's one of those things of play or like get classes that are fun and cool, and that's a bummer because at the same time I want to play a Ranger now because it's one of the few classes I haven't played.
Yeah, like especially how we're rewatching Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Every time we see like Aragorn, I'm like, damn, I wish Rangers were good.
Yeah. It'd be real nice if they were much better. Because he is technically a ranger.
He is a ranger.
That's literally his profession title.
Yeah. Like, they're tracking down orcs. He just puts his ear to the ground and is like, yep, they're that way.
Yeah. Like, and I think rangers are kind of built with these very survival-based campaign in mind.
They're built for survival and, like, tracking and...
Yeah, so if you're not playing a survival
cool
tracking campaign, they just don't fit. And that's kind of not good.
Like, I think a ranger that I've always wanted to play is like an urban bounty hunter.
Yeah.
So, sort of reminiscent of the fucker from Darkest Dungeon, the
Highwayman.
No, not the Highwayman. The Viking-looking motherfucker.
Oh, the one who's got the helmet, the hunter. I'm pretty not the hunter. What's his name? The bounty hunter is the one it's called.
Is that what it's called?
I'm pretty sure he's called a bounty hunter.
Yeah, he's just got the hook and the...
Yeah, him.
Yeah,
the one who's like, and then has the apparent ability to just one-shot most bosses.
Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, you've been marked. Here's your axe.
Yeah. Congratulations. You win a free axe to the face.
Yeah, so that's what I want rangers to be like.
Yeah, fair. Okay, yeah, Kenny, I actually agree with the first comment you made. Take away spellcasting from rangers completely.
I like the spellcasting.
No, I think the spellcasting, it should be changed to be abilities. If you want to specialize in being an archer, get them as abilities rather than spells, I think.
Yeah, so I hate how they're pinholders like archers, you know?
Yeah.
Like they're I tried making a ranger and it's like, oh yeah, do you want so you get a longbow, you have no choice in this.
Yeah.
And so do you want 2 short swords or 2 simple weapons of your choice? And
Which at that point you usually just take the short swords because like, why not?
What the fuck?
I mean, you could get yourself 2 boomerangs and just and then arrow shot.
It don't make no sense.
Yeah. Okay. You have something like 120 possible abilities for them to potentially pick up by level 10. That's insane. No way to get them all. Very customizable. So, and that's the thing, right? Is that's why people like warlocks and like
I was about to say very much
sorcerers.
like warlock.
I don't know about artificers, but the ability to and fighters as well. People love fighters, it seems, because of the pure customizability that they get essentially. So I can agree with that. What's simple for normal games, you already have as urban as a terrain type for rangers. Urban rangers are some of the best detectives and bounty hunters in the game, as long as you choose the correct abilities, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the sort of stuff that I can definitely get behind, because when I'm playing characters, there's 2 sort of ways I go about it. One is like I build to try and be powerful, as like my character wants power because that's the style of campaign we're in. If we are coming up and we have the potential to be fighting dragons, I want to be kitted out to fight a dragon, sort of thing. So that's one way. Or the other way that I do it is I try and subvert everything about the character, right? Playing a barbarian, I make him posh and uptight, and instead of raging, he enters just a trance of like focus, tunnel vision in on the enemy. Make sure you sense things in slow motion, so that way when the enemy like raises their arm for an attack, you're already pinned out like the 3 places to hit with like consecutive attacks that will basically destroy the enemy. That's the sort of style I went for, at least in designing the barbarian that I made the other week. And frankly, I kind of enjoy it because I kind of hate the whole raging barbarian archetype.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's an example of me trying to subvert it. I don't do the subversion thing too often because subverting comes at its own costs, naturally. You know, there's a whole thing that we talked about of playing a Dex barbarian, you don't get your strength rage bonus, etc.
Yeah. I thought it was funny how you're like, I'm going to play a Dex Paladin, and then you're like, Dex Paladin should fucking suck.
Yeah.
And then I made a Dex Paladin, and I'm like, this is epic.
Well, no. It wasn't that Dex Paladin sucked. I actually quite enjoyed the Dex Paladin. I just tried to build a Dex Paladin very Castlevania styled with a whip and stuff. And personally, if you ask me, and we've already had this discussion, whips are underpowered as fuck. You should be able to whip and be able to disarm enemies. You should be able to do all that sort of stuff. Because whips suck. D4 of damage. Blah.
Yeah. Like, why do people even use fucking daggers?
Yeah.
Like, if, so in, like, 6th edition or some shit.
Yeah.
I feel like, I just want 5th edition, but more complex.
Yeah, so going to, like, 3.5, but not so much.
Like,
still accessible, but a bit more complex.
I think 3.5 is cool, but, I want 5e, but moving forward.
Yeah, I think the way you do it, because everyone knows 5th edition, so take the 5th edition stuff and build upon it.
Yeah.
More subclasses, more weapons, more everything. More rules, yeah. Size stuff. Give us size stuff. Jesus Christ.
I can remember a lot of rules.
Yeah.
Like, so size, like fucking the enlarge reduce spell just gives you an extra d4 on damage.
Yeah. Like
rather than if you were large, you would deal double die.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, it don't make sense.
Yeah, or even just give options in how you want to play. Legitimately, if they did, we're releasing D&D 6th edition, the way that you're essentially able to choose from it is here, or you can do 6th edition is technically, here's a bunch of extra stuff and extra possible rules that you can use.
Yeah.
So, we customize our players, but we can also now customize our game entirely, which we kind of already can inherently. If we couldn't, we wouldn't be doing this as a topic of the stream.
Yes.
But, yeah.
But stuff like more reasons to use, like, daggers and short swords and smaller weapons.
Yeah, like, so when you're up close, you get more damage or something.
Yeah. Like, if you're in an enclosed space, you fucking suck with a glaive.
Yeah.
Or, like, a great sword.
There's a scene at the start of the anime Goblin Slayer where the kid who is in the first, like, literally, like, 5 scenes, is swinging a sword around. I think it was a short sword or a long sword.
I think it was a long sword.
Yeah, a long sword around in a cave. It clanks off the roof, alerts the goblins, and as he's recovering from, slamming his sword against the roof, they're already on top of him, smacking the shit out of him. So Kenny says he's removed Barbarian as a class entirely. It is more of a background. If people want to do the trope rage, they can just take the feats while playing a fighter. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
I agree with that. If you have a class and ability for whips, it's too thematic to leave out. So you get, like, I presume, some, like, Indiana Jones type stuff. Because I very much like the whole excess of, like, pulling levers and
Jones
stuff.
Would be like a rogue, I want to say.
Rogue?
Kind of like an Inquisitor.
Mastermind rogue, maybe. Yeah, something like that, I imagine.
Mastermind, Inquisitor.
Yeah, I don't know. Rogues aren't my strong suit. If that's not...
I don't know too much about rogues either, but...
And that's why...
I feel like he would be a rogue.
Yeah. You need to include a bunch of suggested rules if people want them, but aren't required. Yeah, exactly. And actually, as a quick side note, so, I don't recall who I was saying this to, but, in terms of streams, but, so... we were going through the list of topics to talk about in future, and I then proceeded to talk to one of the other boys, Xander, about it, and it was regarding, we were going to do classes as 3 or 4 per stream. And Xander straight up was like, Zach, what are you doing? That is dumb. 1 stream per 1 class. You can talk about an entire class for a stream. And
Yeah.
I gave it some thought, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's a good call. That way we can actually have proper, like, we bring in proper people who actually know how to play the certain classes.
Yeah.
So I then asked him, like, okay, what class do you enjoy the most? And he's like, oh, Rogue, which I totally wouldn't have got. Like, I totally wouldn't have guessed. But bada bing. So I'm like, okay, you're joining us for the Rogue episode, whether you like it or not. So
You will be abducted.
I will bring you here. I'll drive to your house. I will walk into your house, say hi to your girlfriend, and then kidnap you. Whips should be able to get all the abilities you see in Castlevania, Indiana Jones, Rygar, or similar whip users in Fantasy. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's sort of the whole thing I was
It's a
going for.
utility weapon.
Yeah, like, and because we were talking about this, like, you have if you shield, right, you have a shield on your arm, being able to put your whip within the shield, and then just basically whipping it outwards and using it for whatever. Like, that's something I think would be cool, because, for one, you should be able to use small shields, and here's another thing we talked about. 3 categories of shield. This is, I think, what you initially told me.
Yeah, this is what I would like in 6th edition as well. Different types of shields.
Yeah, so you have your normal shield, which is one-handed, plus 2 to AC. Zero-handed shield, so it's just strapped to your arm.
Like, kind of
plus
like
1 AC.
I was thinking kind of like a buckler, even though I'm well aware that historically bucklers were held.
Yes.
They don't just get strapped to your arm. But, yeah, so...
Yeah, but thing is, like, and even while you're holding the shield, it feels like you should be able to hold a whip as well. Like, I don't know, that just feels right to me. But yeah, having smaller shields, so plus 1 AC, everyone would get a shield. I don't know why you wouldn't get a shield unless it's like a monk that can't use shields.
Yeah, or a wizard who can't use shields.
Yeah, like, if you're proficient with a shield, you should get one of these if you want just a small boost to your AC. I can get down with that. It leaves your weapon open. Oh, rip, there is your mic. Yeah, that would be good. Plus, having a whip in one hand, D4 of damage, not even using it for the damage, just for the disarming potential is useful.
Yeah.
Enemies don't get disarmed enough, because I don't know why they don't get
can't be
disarmed.
bothered.
Yeah, it's one of those things where disarming an enemy is annoying to DM. Personally, I prefer to do it if you guys say, hey, I want to try and disarm this enemy. I'd go, okay, what are you going to do? Strength check, maybe. Strength contest, sure, we'll work it out. You use your whip, you cast it outwards. It swings out and wraps around the blade, and as you give it a tug, roll strength. It's going to counter that with strength. Okay, it rolled a 17, you rolled an 18. Okay, as you start pulling outwards, you initially meet a bit of resistance as its grip is still relatively tight on it, but you then kind of turn your shoulder a bit and pull downwards, and you then feel that tightness loosen as the sword clanks to the ground, sort of thing. Use a lot of strategy and tactics. Yeah, it's amazing. I really wish that whips were more used. You often make items be a character or creature's weakness. Removing important tools makes them much easier to beat. Yeah, exactly. Like, even just something like, yeah, whips I very much enjoy. I wish they were more useful. Yeah, because the thing is as well is, like, think about it this way. What about a caster? He's got a small staff or a quarterstaff or a wand. Okay, what happens if you get rid of that? Well, all of a sudden, that, like, cuts his entire spell list down by half.
Yeah.
Because then you can only cast... Because wands and casting foci replace material components that aren't money cost, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's how that works in rules. Granted, I'm just reciting what I've heard from you, so I don't know the entire correctness of it, whether it's like
I can look
PHB.
it up just to make doubly sure.
That's probably a good call, yeah. And yeah, you knock that wand out of their hand, all of a sudden they can only do somatic or somatic and
non-material components unless they can just grab the material.
Yeah, which they probably aren't going to have an eye of a newt and the butthole hairs of a fucking troll in their back pocket, sort of thing. But like, yeah, somatic and non-material verbal is the other spell component. I don't know why I was blanking on that, but they are reduced to a much lesser spell list, and of course that kind of relies on the DM having a list of what spells they know that are castable without the wand. Though I feel like that should just be in all the item and spell lists, there should be a tick box that you can just check for castable without a wand.
Well, that's what I do. I put like a little asterisk next
Yeah.
to things that need a casting focus to be cast,
fair, yeah.
which isn't actually that much.
Yeah,
I've only
yeah.
got like a few niche spells.
I think it's usually the more powerful ones,
Yeah.
usually casting focus
like
based.
shit like gaseous form and
Yeah,
teleport, and so
yeah.
I think that has a material cost.
I don't recall. Okay, Kenny says the Frost Giant Lord is easy to kill if you wait for him to take off his dragon scale cloak or disarm his hammer of blizzards +3. No reason to let him use things that make him far more dangerous than he would be otherwise. Yeah, exactly. Or even if you're trying to be very like smart about it, you trudge up to the Frost Giant Lord's like house. You roll up into his bedroom as he's about to like go to sleep or something, or like as he's taking a shit, and then you just beat the shit out of him while he's taking a shit. It'd be quite useful for him, I imagine. But you get the idea. Like, don't let them be in their prime. It's the whole thing with Batman, right? Batman's always said to be he's unbeatable if you let him prepare. So why would you let any other enemy prepare, sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, if one party is like one group of the combat is dying, why would you let that group be you? That's counterintuitive. There's no chivalry and there's no bravery in letting. I mean, depending on how you're playing it, right?
It don't make no sense.
But like, yeah, if it's a life or death situation, the smart thing is to fucking fight with everything you've got. Use every strategy and every plan you have in mind. If it's just to like being disarmed or whatever, then go easy. Don't bite their eyeballs, sort of thing. But like, you get the idea. It's like what was that quote? If I tried to grab your eyeballs,
from Shutter Island.
Yeah.
As he's about to hop out of the car after they had a little chat.
Yeah.
He leans over to him and he goes, "If I were to sink my teeth into your eye right now, do you think you'd be able to stop me before I blinded you?"
Yeah, he's
like, "Why didn't you find out?"
Fair.
I was like, "That's the spirit."
Yeah, and like that's the good shit, right? Like, at the end of the day, realistically in combat, do whatever the fuck you need to do to survive, because that's just how it works.
So
that's what goblins are gonna do. That's what kobolds are gonna do. That's what every enemy is gonna do.
Yeah, I found the material components thing.
Yeah.
Some spells require material. Casting some spells requires particular objects specified in parentheses in the components entry.
Yeah.
A character can use a components pouch or a spellcasting focus in place of the components specified for a spell.
Wait, so hang on. So a component pouch works. It just presumes you've got all the components in there. Oh, okay. I thought it was that you have to. It's just a storage for getting those components.
No. Thing is, you can use a components pouch for multiple different casting types if you like multi-classed. So if you're a cleric wizard, you can use a components pouch for both.
Oh, as opposed to having a
holy symbol and a casting focus.
Oh, I get it. Okay, that makes sense. Right. Because that's always been something that I've been confused about, but that does make sense now, actually.
In place of the components found in the spell. But if a cost is indicated for the component, a character must have that specific component before he or she can cast the spell.
Yeah.
If a spell states the material component is consumed by the spell, the caster must provide this component for each casting of the spell. And the spellcaster must have a hand free to access these components.
Right.
But
so
it can
they can't
be the same
use it
hand that he or she uses to perform the somatic components.
Right. So if you're gesturing,
so you can shake your wand at someone.
Yeah, fair.
And that's a somatic and material.
You darn sorcerers, get off my lawn.
You rootin' tootin'
druids.
Yeah.
And so Kenny says he thinks one of the worst threats you've had an NPC give was, you see this, flicks a bottle of hypervenomous nasty spider inside hissing violently. I'm going to transload it into your testicular sac. Ooh, that's that sounds very concerning. As a note, combat did not take place afterwards. I'll tell you what, I don't blame you. That does sound like a situation of where combat would preferentially be avoided, because that sounds like something that I would prefer to not have happened to me, frankly. But
when you're drinking in the tavern and then you pass out from drinking so much, and the bartender goes, "Finally."
yeah, it's I mean, hey, play a UNT.
Wake up in a cage.
Oh no. That's gonna be a bit of a yikes from me. But yeah, okay, so yeah, for the most part, and then so we've gone on a massive tangent talking about one shots and stuff. But the other way of testing your modifications is just to simply throw them in and say, "Hey, players, I'm testing out this thing. Let me know what you think. We can take a break when it's dinner time or lunchtime or whatever. If you play, I don't think anyone is crazy enough to play before breakfast. But yeah,
It just depends on how long you're playing.
I mean, true. You're not wrong. But I mean, at least between our group, we always do it afternoon to getting dinner, which frankly is my favorite time to play D&D because I can open the windows and have that nice afternoon air come in.
The most wonderful time of the day.
Yes, the time when everyone's going to sleep. But yeah, so it's one of those things where as we take a break for dinner, we'll drive into the town nearby and just be like, "Yo, so what's everyone been thinking about this whole thing?" And depending on whether it's
Everyone's
good or not,
like, "It's shit."
okay, I will remove it then. Now, well, a perfect example of that is Wolfgang, the fire character. He had his heat bars that we put in for a while, where we wanted to have a thing where there was limitations.
Absorb before using it.
Yeah, essentially, like he could generate his own heat, but he could also absorb it from the environment and then use it for stronger attacks or something. Which we ended up, I think, removing because it was too circumstantial, and it was something that I had to think about while making certain types of environments. And it always came down to the question of, "Hey, Zach, do I have enough heat bars for this?" And I was like,
Maybe.
I'm like, "What, you've got 4 heat bars, so you're probably at like 60 degrees Celsius right now, I guess." Or like something like that of like, I've got, it's constantly having to be like, maybe, I don't know, and stretching it. And it was cool for the, like, that one time that there was that massive heat vent in the center that he like fully just jumped over into and was like absorbing it into the air sort of, or into himself, and then use that for a massive attack. But like past that, it was one of those sort of situations where it was a semantic that could have been done differently. Actually, that's another stat I would suggest if you wanted to make a 7th stat or a 7th ability, or not 7th ability, another ability, having a stamina ability.
So it's generally just considered con.
True, I suppose. Yeah, con, dex, and strength. But just, or I suppose having an extra ability, like it wouldn't be the same as in like the 6 abilities. It would be more of just an extra consumable, I guess. So you have 12 stamina points or whatever.
I guess that could be a con check.
What specifically?
Like if you're going for a long run.
Oh, true. Yeah. Con or strength.
Athletics.
Depends on really how you want to do it.
Yeah.
I would generally say in that circumstance, if you want to go for speed, I would say dexterity. If you wanted to go for...
I'd say speed would be athletics.
Okay, maybe, yeah, speed, maybe athletics. If it was you were sprinting around and jumping over hurdles, it'd be dex, and if you wanted to just go for distance, it would be constitution.
Yeah.
Is how I would put it. But yeah, like, it's all circumstantial. Like, I like the idea of having extra counters and stuff that you can go through. I've been playing a side campaign called Stars Without Number, where it's like a space campaign where you can have like cyborgs and people who have augments and stuff. And there's a certain amount of points that you can have dictated by your constitution of system strain, which is essentially how much augments or medicine your body can take before freaking out, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So at the moment, since I'm playing a medic, all of my stuff, like all the gear I have, it's like, okay, I can get you back up from being unconscious, but you take 2 system strain, or I can slap myself and heal. So, and like, this is talking like you have 7 health,
yeah,
like sort of thing. Here's like 3 health back, but you take system strain, sort of thing. So,
right,
and system strain, I think it takes like a week to recover, or something, or it's like some amount of time to recover, and that is one of those sort of things where it's having something to keep track of, so you don't just abuse healing, is quite useful in my opinion.
Yeah, in like Borderlands, Wilhelm got like all these augments and shit because he had like shit con.
Yeah, which is sort of the opposite of that, where he's gone out of his way to do stuff to get himself stronger.
Yeah, he's been like who's like
Nanomachines, son.
born with like brittle bones.
Yeah.
So he's like, gonna put some metal reinforcements in there. He's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I can keep doing that.
Yeah.
And then he just turns into a fucking machine.
Yeah. Up until the point, where he's basically more machine than person.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it's all circumstantial, and based on how the campaign goes, of course, you can't do that stuff. Like, you can't have system strain from cybernetics in a traditional D&D style sort of thing.
The fuck is a cybernetic?
Yeah, which, I mean, specifically speaking, in D&D itself, it has the attunement slots and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
which
there's
is
a few
thing.
prosthetic limbs.
Yeah.
They do take an attunement slot, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, but I would generally say it's one of those things where I wouldn't liken it to a stamina bar. Like, I think in terms of stamina, it's just doing constitution checks is really the closest thing that D&D has, but I wanted to have a more stable situation for stamina, so I think the way we ended up doing it was you have const modifier plus dex modifier plus strength modifier points that you can use, and depending on what kind of attacks you wanted to go for, if it was a big attack, it would take like 5 stamina. If it was a medium attack, it would be 3. Small was 1, etc.
Well, I do feel like stamina would just be tied to con. Because, you can be really strong, but you got shit cardio.
Yeah, it's fair.
So, con is basically cardio.
Yeah, I could see that, yeah, definitely.
Like, a con check would be like cardio, con save would be liver.
Yeah. I mean, strength is muscle. Dex, I think, is... Well, actually, I think even the better way we can put it up, because there's red and there's white meat, if I'm not mistaken, yeah? White meat is your fast reaction time stuff.
So strength is just, how much you can push something.
Yeah, it's your red meat
Dex
equivalent.
Is like coordination.
Yep, coordination, quick movement, etc.
Yeah.
Slight of, like, smoothness, etc. I'd put that to... If you're talking types of meat, red meat is your, if I'm recalling it correctly, big muscles.
Yep.
Your big, strong energy. Your white meat is your quick reaction, dex type stuff.
Like chickens or crocodiles.
Yeah, and then your constitution is your blood vessels and your lungs, making sure you actually get oxygen into the rest of your muscles.
Yeah.
That's, I think, how I would generally scientifically put it, or biologically put it.
I think that's pretty close.
Yeah, but that's all just semantics regardless, because it is what it is at the end of the day. Granted, in that sort of situation, that was using superpowers and it was a bit weird. It's one of those things where I've said, and both of us actually have talked about it, because we went that one night where we were making the list of stuff to fix if we were to do another hero campaign, and having proper stamina is one of those things that was very high on that list there. But yeah, that's the whole thing. That being said, is there any other points that we should make on this regarding custom building stuff and like changing the campaign before we start wrapping up? Because we've been going for, I think, as long as, well, with the addition of the first bit after or before the crash of OBS, and this combined, we've got about 2 and 45 minutes worth of recording at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments to make? I suppose. Yeah. Generally, all that good sort of stuff. This is all speculation, just talking about stuff. Realistically, we for 3 hours have just basically been saying, "Hey, modify stuff as much as you want." Yeah. There are 3 kind of categories that are scope. Do whatever really works and test it with your friends.
Yeah, I'd say that an important thing about DMing is follow the rules of the DMG.
Yes.
The main rule to follow being do whatever you want.
Yeah, so in other words, do what the fuck you really want to do. Like, I mean, I suppose, yeah, that's a sort of, I wouldn't say call card now, but the whole thing of our campaign, or not campaign, this podcast is, it's essentially each episode is 3 hours talking loosely and reciting stories regarding a certain topic that can be summarized to probably about 3 minutes of talking.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not seeing anything in chat, so what I would say is, remember, 3 days from now, probably a bit earlier in the day, so 2 days and, I don't know, 15 hours or so from now, we will be doing our 10-year anniversary of
New Vegas.
Yeah, Fallout New Vegas. Kris, I presume you'll probably be playing for most of that time, and I can talk, and we'll do the 2-player talking stuff like we're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because you're much more fluent with New Vegas, and I'm pretty sure you're the main one who wants to play New Vegas at the moment.
Yeah, I do.
So yeah, we can get into that. So yeah, if you're interested in New Vegas, come and join us for that. It'll probably be too late now by the podcast coming out, but yeah, it should be good. I'll put out a video on the actual, like, in the Discord on the stream. I don't know how I'll do it on the stream. I'll talk about it in the next upcoming days, and I'll put stuff in the Discord and on the YouTube about it. So come and join us. I suppose I don't really have a proper time that we want to start because we haven't really talked about the proper time we want to start. It's a Sunday, so really whatever time you're good to go.
18th, yeah?
It was the 18th, I do believe, yes. So 18.
And I'll just double check.
Yeah.
Hey Siri, when was Fallout New Vegas released?
Fallout New Vegas was published the 19th of October 2010.
19th? Is that so? That's odd, because I thought mine was saying it was the 18th. So it's on the Monday now.
Huh.
I mean...
Well, I think I counted to the Monday, and then we just sort of were like, oh yeah, Sunday.
Yeah, well, it's somewhere around there, fair. Okay, well, Monday then. I suppose either that or we do it on the Sunday and just call it the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah, well, we're Australian time regardless, so it's going to be wacky for everyone.
Everyone's going to be like, ugh, if we do it on the Sunday, you missed it by, you're 2 days early.
It doesn't matter. Well, I mean, we can do 3 days worth of streaming if you're up for it. We go the Sunday, the Monday, and also the Tuesday.
It's like, cool. Time to stop playing.
That sounds absolutely insane. Though I need to make sure I get my uni work done before we do that, because holy crap, that's going to be painful. And I'm pretty sure
Holy
I've got...
crap, Lois.
Yeah, that's... I mean, assuming we play like a couple of hours each day.
Yeah.
A couple being like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, depending on how much you want to play.
No, it's an easy game to play.
Fair, but is it easy to talk over is the other thing.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, cool. What's this guy saying to me? Skip.
Fair. Yeah, regardless, we'll get all that stuff done. But as for the podcast, we've pretty much just been on tangent. But yes, thanks for watching, all that good sort of stuff. I don't know when this is going to come out. Sometime soon. I've got a bunch of editing to do, so fun stuff. I'll get to that eventually. Yes, thanks for watching, and goodbye.